Welcome, fearless explorers of the unseen, to the rivers of Texas, land of vast landscapes, hidden bayous, and waters that have borne witness to centuries of history. Tonight, we drift along waterways where the currents carry more than debris. They carry spirits, echoes of tragedy, and the whispers of the lost. Rivers are lifelines, but some have histories steeped in sorrow. Battles, accidents, drownings, and mysterious disappearances have left an imprint, a spiritual residue that refuses to dissipate. Locals speak of ghostly lights hovering over the water, shadowy figures drifting along the banks, and apparitions appearing in misty riverbeds. Tonight, we explore 25 haunted rivers in Texas, where ghosts still float. From urban streams to remote bayous, each with a chilling story and restless spirits. Some encounters are documented, others whispered in local legend, but all serve as a reminder. Some waters never forget, and some souls never rest. So stay close, keep your lantern bright, and let the river guide us, if you dare. The San Antonio River has long been the lifeblood of the city that bears its name. Winding through the heart of San Antonio and threading together centuries of history, culture, and human endeavor. Its waters have borne witness to countless events, settlement, commerce, and conflict, and have carried with them the echoes of the lives touched by its banks. By day, the river is alive, with tourists strolling along the river walk, boats gliding along its surface, and the chatter of restaurants and shops. But as night falls, the atmosphere changes. A quiet stillness settles over the water, and many visitors report experiences that suggest the river is far more than a scenic landmark. Ghostly figures have been seen wandering along the walkways, their shapes vague and shifting, sometimes reaching for unseen companions. The origins of the river's haunting reputation trace back centuries. Long before the arrival of European settlers, the river was central to the lives of the indigenous Coe-Wiltacan and other Native American tribes. It provided water, food, and a means of travel, but it was also a witness to conflict and loss. Later, Spanish explorers and missionaries established missions along its banks, building structures that would become the foundation of the modern city. Life along the river was often precarious, as disease, skirmishes, and harsh conditions claimed many lives. With each passing century, the river accumulated layers of memory and tragedy, creating an invisible tapestry of human experience that some believe remains palpable to this day. Ghostly figures are among the most commonly reported phenomena along the San Antonio River at night. Witnesses describe seeing shadowy shapes pacing along the stone walkways or standing near bridges, their movements deliberate and contemplative. Some appear in clothing reminiscent of early settlers or Spanish missionaries, their forms semi-transparent yet unmistakably human. At times, these figures reach out, extending hands toward the water or toward companions who are not visible. Observers often feel a strange pull in these moments, as if the spirits are trying to communicate, seeking connection, or attempting to warn those who tread too close to danger. The fleeting nature of these apparitions only adds to their mystery, vanishing suddenly or dissolving into the night without a trace. Whispers are another recurring phenomenon. Visitors report faint murmurs drifting across the river, carried on the breeze in a way that seems impossible to trace. The voices are often indistinct, fragments of speech that may rise and fall in tone, pitch, and urgency. Some describe the whispers as urgent warnings. Go back, be careful, or the simple calling of a name. Others hear more sorrowful tones, as if the voices belong to those who have longed to be remembered. The effect is subtle, yet undeniable. Even in the presence of modern city noise, the whispers seem to linger, their source impossible to locate, creating a haunting sense that the river itself remembers the lives, conflicts, and tragedies that occurred along its banks. The environment along the river contributes to the eerie sensation. Old stone bridges, weathered walkways, and shadows cast by the surrounding architecture create an atmosphere of depth and mystery. Even during the day, these elements hint at layers of history hidden beneath the surface. But at night, the effect is magnified. Reflections on the water, distant lanterns, or muted streetlights can give the illusion of movement where none exists, and the slight mist rising from the river adds an ethereal quality. Many visitors describe an uncanny feeling of being watched or accompanied, an intangible presence that seems to move alongside them as they walk along the quiet paths. One particularly compelling account comes from a nighttime stroll along the Riverwalk. A visitor reported seeing a figure in early 19th century attire standing near the edge of the water, motionless yet unmistakably human in form. As she approached, the figure raised its hand, reaching toward an invisible companion, and then dissolved into the darkness. Almost immediately, she heard whispers drifting across the water, faint but insistent, repeating her own name in a voice that seemed both familiar and distant. The experience left her shaken, but profoundly aware that the river carries more than water. It carries memory, history, and something that cannot be fully explained. Local lore reinforces the idea that the San Antonio River is alive with memory. Stories are told of Spanish settlers, Native Americans, and early citizens whose lives ended along the river, whether through conflict, accident, or disease. Some legends speak of spirits who remained tethered to the river, walking its banks or moving silently above its waters, seeking resolution, remembrance, or simply existing in a state between life and death. Others describe the river as a living witness, a conduit for these lingering energies, allowing echoes of the past to reach those willing to notice. Paranormal investigators have documented a variety of unexplained phenomena along the river. Audio recordings capture faint whispers and distant footsteps. Video cameras occasionally record shadowy figures that vanish upon approach. Visitors report sudden chills, cold drafts, or the sensation of an unseen hand lightly brushing their arm. While skeptics may attribute these experiences to environmental factors, the consistency of eyewitness accounts over decades suggests a persistent presence tied to the river's long and storied history. The Brazos River in central Texas is a winding, powerful waterway, stretching hundreds of miles through the heart of the state. For centuries, it has served as a vital lifeline, providing water, transportation, and sustenance for Native Americans, settlers, and travelers alike. Yet, beneath its tranquil surface lies a darker history. The river has claimed countless lives over the years, from accidental drownings and treacherous currents to conflicts and misfortune. Locals speak of the Brazos not merely as a river, but as a vessel that carries the memories and unrest of those who never crossed it safely. At night, many who venture near its banks report strange, unsettling occurrences. Spectral figures floating along the shoreline, glowing orbs hovering above the current, and faint, desperate cries carried on the wind as if the river itself mourns the lost. The haunted reputation of the Brazos River is deeply tied to its history. Early settlers and travelers often attempted to ford its waters without the benefit of bridges or proper crossings. Sudden currents, hidden sandbars, and flash floods made these attempts dangerous, and many perished in the process. Native Americans also knew the river's power and respected its unpredictable nature, and oral traditions tell of those who drowned while trying to navigate or fish its depths. Over generations, these tragedies left a lingering imprint, shaping a perception that the river is haunted by the souls of those who never reached the opposite shore. One of the most commonly reported phenomena along the Brazos is the appearance of ghostly figures. Witnesses describe translucent forms standing at the water's edge, often shrouded in mist or reflected in the river's dark surface. Some appear dressed in period clothing, resembling settlers from the 1800s or travelers carrying heavy packs, while others are indistinct, their shapes blurry and almost ethereal. These figures often linger without movement, staring silently across the water as if yearning to reach something just out of reach. On occasion, they are seen walking along the banks, fading in and out of visibility, leaving observers with the chilling sense that the river itself preserves the presence of the lost. Glowing orbs are another frequent sight along the river at night. Many describe small, spherical lights hovering just above the water, drifting with the current or bobbing gently in place. These lights appear without explanation, sometimes leading along the riverbank or moving toward areas where drownings or accidents occurred in the past. Witnesses often report a sense of both curiosity and unease, feeling drawn to follow the orbs while simultaneously aware that unseen forces may be watching. Paranormal investigators have recorded these lights on camera, noting their sudden appearance and disappearance, and the way they seem to move with purpose, not unlike lanterns carried by unseen hands. The Brazos River is also known for its haunting auditory phenomena. Many visitors report faint cries echoing over the water at night, voices that sound distant, urgent, and filled with despair. Some describe hearing names called out, as though the river is trying to reach the living and communicate with them. Others speak of indistinct murmurs or whispers, impossible to decipher, but undeniably human in origin. These sounds often appear when the river is otherwise still, amplifying the eerie impression that the spirits of those who perished are still trapped along the banks, repeating their last moments or calling for aid. The environment around the Brazos enhances the haunting experience. Thick trees line portions of the riverbank, their branches creating dark tunnels of shadow. Mist often rises from the water in the early morning or late evening, wrapping the river in an ethereal veil. Moonlight reflects off the current, illuminating movements along the banks that may be human or may not. Even on warm nights, visitors report sudden chills, a sense of unseen eyes watching, or the subtle brush of air against their skin, as if invisible hands are guiding them away from the water or drawing them closer. These sensations, combined with the visual and auditory phenomena, create a profound sense of presence, a feeling that the river is alive with memory. One particularly striking account comes from a fisherman who remained along the Brazos well after sunset. As he cast his line into the dark water, he noticed a pale figure standing near the shoreline, unmoving. Moments later, glowing orbs appeared above the current, floating toward the spot where the figure stood. He then heard a distant, anguished cry, and the air seemed to chill around him. When he looked again, both the figure and the orbs had vanished, leaving only the quiet rustle of the river and a lingering sense of something unseen just beyond his vision. The fisherman left the river that night deeply unsettled, convinced that he had glimpsed the lingering souls of those who had never made it across its waters. Local lore continues to reinforce the river's haunted reputation. Stories speak of settlers lost in the currents, travelers swept away during storms, and accidental drownings during crossings. Some claim that these spirits remain tethered to the river, replaying their final moments, searching for companions, or simply existing in a liminal state between life and death. Ghostly figures, glowing orbs, and the sounds of distant cries are all said to be manifestations of this unrest, a reminder that the Brazos River is more than just a waterway. It is a living repository of memory, tragedy, and the echoes of lives lost. Paranormal investigators have captured many of these occurrences, from spectral lights on video to audio recordings of distant cries and whispers. Visitors frequently report sudden temperature drops, the sensation of being followed, or fleeting glimpses of figures at the edge of perception. While skeptics may attribute these phenomena to wind, reflections, or imagination, the sheer consistency of first-hand accounts over decades suggests a persistent presence tied to the river's long and tragic history. The Guadalupe River winds gracefully through the heart of Texas Hill Country, its waters sparkling under the sun and carving deep valleys lined with limestone cliffs and dense foliage. By day, it is a haven for recreation, canoeing, tubing, and fishing, draw locals and tourists alike. But by night and in the early morning mist, the river takes on a far more mysterious and unsettling character. For centuries, the Guadalupe has been both lifeline and menace, providing water and sustenance while claiming the lives of those who ventured too far or underestimated its currents. Visitors over the years have reported ghostly phenomena that hint at the river's long and tragic history. Phantom canoeists paddling silently along the current, shadowy figures moving along misty banks, and whispered warnings of unseen danger carried on the wind. These spectral echoes suggest that the river remembers every life it has touched, and that the spirits of the lost continue to drift along its waters. The haunting reputation of the Guadalupe River is deeply rooted in history. Early settlers and Native American tribes relied on the river for travel, trade, and survival, navigating its twists and turns with canoes, rafts, and rudimentary boats. Its waters, while generally calm in stretches, can become treacherous during floods or after storms. And many lives were lost to sudden currents, submerged obstacles, or capsized vessels. Over time, these tragedies left an imprint on the land and the people who lived nearby. Local lore maintains that the spirits of those lost in the river depths remain tethered to its waters, moving silently through mist and shadow, replaying their final moments for anyone willing or unlucky enough to witness them. Phantom canoeists are among the most commonly reported phenomena along the Guadalupe. Visitors describe seeing the faint outline of a lone paddler gliding along the surface of the river, sometimes disappearing as suddenly as they appeared. These figures are often cloaked in mist, their forms translucent and flickering with the play of early morning light or moonlight on the water. Some witnesses claim to have seen multiple figures moving together silently, as if reenacting a journey interrupted by tragedy. Others report that these apparitions are aware of observers, pausing to look in their direction before vanishing into the fog, leaving only the gentle ripple of water behind. Shadowy figures along the banks are another common occurrence. Many describe shapes moving slowly through the mist, sometimes reaching toward the water as if attempting to grasp something lost. These figures appear both human and spectral, their movements deliberate but unnervingly silent. At times, they are glimpsed near trees or along rocky cliffs, disappearing behind foliage only to reappear moments later. Visitors often report an overwhelming sense of being watched or accompanied, a presence that is tangible yet invisible, reinforcing the idea that the river carries the memory of countless lives lost along its course. Whispered warnings are a hallmark of the Guadalupe's haunted reputation. Some voices appear to caution travelers, "Stop, be careful," or "turn back." Others are indecipherable, fragments of conversation or cries for help that drift through the air in a haunting rhythm. These whispers often accompany sightings of phantom canoeists or shadowy figures, creating an immersive and chilling experience that blends visual, auditory, and emotional phenomena. Visitors describe the effect as both terrifying and strangely compelling, as if the river itself is reaching out to communicate its history in the presence of the departed. The environment along the Guadalupe River amplifies these experiences. Limestone cliffs and dense trees create deep shadows that obscure vision and distort movement. Mist rising from the river in the early hours blankets the surface, making shapes appear and disappear with every gust of wind. Reflections on the water, shifting light, and the natural sounds of flowing currents combine to create an atmosphere that feels charged with unseen activity. Even on warm days, sudden chills and inexplicable breezes can make visitors acutely aware of the presence of something beyond the ordinary. These natural conditions, coupled with the river's tragic history, form a perfect stage for the experiences reported by witnesses over the decades. One particularly vivid account comes from a group of canoeists navigating a quiet stretch of the river before dawn. As they paddled through the morning mist, they noticed a lone figure in a small canoe gliding silently beside them. The figure's form was hazy but distinctly human, wearing what appeared to be 19th century clothing. When one of the canoeists attempted to wave, the figure remained still, its hand raised in a silent warning. Moments later, it vanished into the mist, leaving behind only the faint sound of water lapping against an invisible hull and a cold breeze that sent shivers down their spines. The group later reported hearing whispers over the water, indistinct but insistent, repeating fragments of names or warnings that seemed to echo from nowhere. Local folklore reinforces the Guadalupe's spectral reputation. Stories speak of settlers lost while attempting to navigate the river, Native Americans who perished in its currents, and travelers who succumbed to sudden storms or misjudged crossings. Some legends claim that these spirits continue to haunt the river, retracing their final journeys or lingering along the banks, warning the living of the dangers hidden beneath the surface. Phantom canoeists, shadowy figures, and whispered voices serve as reminders that the river is not merely water and landscape, it is memory, history, and lingering presence. Paranormal investigators have documented many of these phenomena. Cameras have captured hazy forms gliding along the river. Audio devices often record faint whispers, and eyewitnesses frequently report sudden temperature drops or the sensation of unseen hands brushing against them. While skeptics may explain these occurrences as reflections, mist, or imagination, the sheer consistency of reports over time suggests a persistent, unexplained presence tied to the river's long and tragic history. The Colorado River in central Texas flows with a quiet power. Its wide waters stretching across rolling hills and fertile valleys, carrying with it centuries of history. For generations, the river has been a source of life, providing water for farming, towns, and wildlife. But beneath its calm surface lies a darker legacy. The Colorado River has claimed countless lives over the years. Accidental drownings, treacherous currents, and forgotten shipwrecks tell a story of danger and tragedy that few can ignore. Along its banks lie old cemeteries and abandoned homesteads, relics of lives lived close to the water, yet claimed too soon by it. Locals and visitors alike have long reported strange phenomena along the river, from ghostly lights hovering above the surface to ethereal shapes moving against the current, as if searching for travelers who never made it safely to the other side. The haunting of the Colorado River is rooted in its long history. Native Americans relied on the river for food and transportation, navigating its waters in canoes and rafts. Later, European settlers and pioneers used the river to move goods and people, often underestimating its sudden currents or dangerous shoals. Shipwrecks were not uncommon, particularly during storms or when attempting crossings at night. Accidental drownings occurred when individuals ventured too far or misjudged the river's depth. Over time, the river absorbed the memories of these events, leaving a lingering impression that some believe persists to this day in the form of spectral activity. One of the most frequently reported phenomena along the Colorado River is the appearance of ghostly lights hovering over the water. Witnesses describe small, flickering orbs that drift along the surface, sometimes moving upstream or against the current, as if searching for something or someone lost. The lights are often brightest at night, reflecting off the dark waters and giving the impression of lanterns carried by unseen hands. Many locals refer to these as river spirits or lost travelers, suggesting that the lights are the restless energy of those who perished in shipwrecks or drownings. Witnesses often describe feelings of both awe and unease, a sense that the lights are alive with intention, silently observing or guiding. Shadowy figures are another common experience. Observers have reported seeing humanoid shapes near the riverbanks, sometimes appearing partially submerged or standing on old docks and jetties long abandoned. These figures are often described as indistinct, ghostly forms that vanish when approached, leaving only the sound of moving water and a sudden chill in the air. Some appear to be searching, raising their hands or gazing into the river as though hoping to recover something lost to time. On quiet evenings, the presence of these figures can be deeply unsettling, as if the river itself has become a corridor between the living and the dead. Auditory phenomena add another layer to the haunting. Visitors often report hearing cries, shouts, or distant calls carried by the wind. Some describe faint voices that sound like warnings, "Turn back," "Don't come near," or the echo of a name spoken long ago. Others report hearing the creak of old boats or the splash of oars, even when no vessel is present. These sounds are often accompanied by sudden chills or gusts of wind that seem localized and impossible to explain. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile sensations creates an immersive experience that many describe as profoundly eerie, leaving a lasting impression on those who walk along the riverbanks after dark. One particularly vivid account comes from a group of campers who spent the night near a remote bend in the Colorado River. As darkness fell, one camper noticed a flickering light moving across the water. At first, it seemed to be floating with the current, but then it moved upstream, slowly and deliberately. Moments later, a shadowy figure appeared near the river's edge, standing perfectly still and gazing across the water. The campers reported hearing soft whispers carried on the wind, urging them to stay back. By morning, both the light and the figure had vanished, leaving only the calm river and the memory of an encounter that none would forget. The river's spectral activity often coincides with its historical sites. Along the banks, old cemeteries mark the resting places of settlers and pioneers, while abandoned homesteads and docks hint at lives once intertwined with the water. Witnesses frequently report ghostly figures near these locations, as if the spirits are tied to the places they once lived, worked, or traveled along. Some legends speak of travelers who perished while attempting to cross the river, their spirits forever searching for the banks they never reached. Others suggest that the lights seen on the river are lanterns from ghostly boats, carrying souls of the lost in silent procession. Paranormal investigators have documented numerous occurrences along the Colorado River. Cameras sometimes capture faint, shifting shapes above the water or near the banks, while audio devices record unexplained whispers and distant footsteps. Visitors report sudden temperature drops, the feeling of being watched, or fleeting touches as if guided by invisible hands. Skeptics may attribute these experiences to reflections, mist, or imagination, but the consistency and variety of first-hand accounts over decades suggest a persistent presence tied to the river's tragic past. The Trinity River, winding through the heart of the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex, has long been a silent witness to the region's turbulent history. Its waters have carried settlers, traders, and soldiers, and its banks have seen the rise of towns, the clash of armies, and the passage of countless travelers. Beneath the bustling modern city, the river remains a repository of memories, some dark, some tragic, and some that defy explanation. For centuries, the Trinity River has drawn attention, not only for its natural beauty, but also for its reputation as a haunted waterway. Locals and visitors alike have reported ghostly phenomena along its shores, from spectral figures wandering the misty banks to flickering lights hovering above the water. Some claim to have glimpsed shadowy riders on horseback, moving silently through the fog as if replaying long-forgotten patrols or battles. The river carries with it the echoes of those who once traversed its waters and those who never made it across. Much of the Trinity River's haunted reputation stems from its connection to the Civil War and the tumultuous years that followed. Texas played a significant role in the conflict, and armies and skirmishes moved through the region. Soldiers stationed along or near the river often faced not only the threat of combat, but also the hazards of the river itself. Drownings, exposure, and accidents were common. Over time, legends grew that the spirits of these soldiers lingered along the banks, bound to the river by unfinished duty or tragic deaths. Locals tell of figures in period uniforms seen walking the shoreline, standing silently at the water's edge, or riding along forested paths that line the river. These apparitions are often described as solemn, their presence quiet yet deeply unsettling, a reminder of a past that refuses to remain buried. The river is also said to be haunted by lost wanderers, settlers, traders, and travelers who succumbed to the river's currents or became disoriented along its foggy banks. On misty mornings, visitors report seeing ghostly figures emerging from the fog, moving along paths that no longer exist, and sometimes vanishing into the trees or across the water. These figures are often indistinct, their movements slow and deliberate, giving the impression of souls trapped between worlds, searching for a destination they can never reach. Shadows stretch unnaturally long in the early light, creating a sense of presence even where no one is visible. Many who have encountered these figures describe an intense feeling of being watched or followed, though no living presence is near. Flickering lights are a common phenomenon along the Trinity River. Witnesses describe small, transient lights that appear to hover above the water or dart among trees along the banks. Some seem to move with purpose, following the curves of the river or illuminating areas where accidents or battles are said to have occurred. These lights are often brightest in the pre-dawn hours or after sunset, and their sudden appearance can startle even experienced hikers or fishermen. Local lore suggests these lights may represent lanterns carried by soldiers or travelers lost in the fog. their spectral glow serving as both warning and guide for the living. Paranormal investigators have documented these lights on video, noting their sudden appearance, their erratic movement, and the impossibility of attributing them to conventional sources. Perhaps the most dramatic reports involve shadowy riders on horseback. Accounts vary, but witnesses describe seeing one or more figures riding along river trails or misty clearings, their shapes dark and indistinct, often disappearing into the fog or behind trees. Some describe hearing the distant clatter of hooves, the creak of leather, or the soft jingle of harnesses before the figures vanish entirely. These riders are often connected in local stories to Civil War patrols, scouts, or lost cavalrymen, eternally riding along the river they once defended. Sightings are typically accompanied by an overwhelming sense of history and presence, as if the river itself has conjured these images to remind observers of the lives that passed through and around its waters. Auditory phenomena are common along the Trinity's haunted stretches. Visitors report faint cries, distant shouts, or the echoes of conversations carried on the wind. Some describe hearing orders called out in Spanish or English, muffled commands from soldiers long gone, or the panicked cries of those who drowned or were lost along the river. Others report footsteps approaching along empty trails or the soft clip-clop of hooves echoing across the water. These sounds often appear at moments when the river is otherwise silent, amplifying the sense of another presence. Some even describe whispers of their own names, as if the river is calling attention to them specifically, linking them to centuries of memory and tragedy along its banks. One particularly vivid account comes from a fisherman who stayed along a remote bend of the Trinity just before dawn. As mist rose from the water, he saw a figure in Civil War rear uniform walking along the bank, stopping occasionally to glance toward the river. Moments later, a faint glow appeared on the opposite shore, drifting slowly across the current. Then, from the tree line, the sound of hooves echoed faintly, growing louder before abruptly ceasing. The fisherman reported feeling an intense chill and an indescribable sense of being watched. When he returned later to investigate, the figure, the light, and the hooves had vanished, leaving only the quiet river and the haunting memory of what he had witnessed. The Trinity River's haunted reputation persists due to its deep connection to history and the tragedies along its shores, from Civil War soldiers and lost wanderers to forgotten homesteads and submerged relics. The river is a living repository of memory. Ghostly figures, flickering lights, shadowy riders, and phantom cries serve as reminders that the river is more than a body of water. It is a channel of human experience, preserving echoes of lives lost, dangers encountered, and stories that remain untold. The Sabine River, forming part of the natural border between Texas and Louisiana, stretches for hundreds of miles through dense forests, bayous, and rolling hills. Its waters have long sustained communities, providing a vital route for trade, travel, and sustenance. Yet beneath its placid surface lies a history tinged with hardship, tragedy, and untold stories. For centuries, the river has claimed lives from settlers navigating its winding course to those who perished in storms or accidents. Over time, these losses have left an imprint not just on the landscape, but, according to local legend, on the river itself. Visitors and residents alike report strange phenomena, ghostly silhouettes wandering the riverbanks, laughter and cries echoing across the water, and even the haunting strains of piano music drifting from unseen sources. The Sabine River seems to remember every soul lost along its shores, offering a spectral reflection of its long and tragic history. The river's haunted reputation is deeply rooted in its early settlement. In the 18th and 19th centuries, pioneers and settlers moved into East Texas and the bordering regions of Louisiana, drawn by fertile land and access to the waterway. The Sabine was a lifeline for transportation, yet it was unpredictable. Sudden floods, treacherous currents, and hidden snags often claimed the lives of travelers, fishermen, and traders. Native Americans and settlers alike understood the river's dangers, and many stories passed down through generations speak of those who disappeared without a trace. Over time, these tragedies became intertwined with the folklore of the region, leaving behind a legacy of lingering spirits and unexplained occurrences. Ghostly silhouettes are among the most frequently reported phenomena along the Sabine River. Witnesses describe shadowy figures moving along the water's edge, appearing both human and ethereal. Some figures resemble settlers in period clothing, their forms hazy and shifting in the mist that often rises from the river at dawn or dusk. Others are more ambiguous, their shapes fleeting and indistinct, vanishing when approached or when light falls upon them. Observers often describe an unsettling sense of being watched or followed, as if the river itself is aware of their presence. These apparitions are reported along isolated stretches of the river, particularly near old docks, abandoned homes, and overgrown trails where history lingers heavily in the air. Auditory phenomena are a common feature of the Sabine's haunting. Many visitors report hearing laughter or cries carried across the water, some joyful, others filled with sorrow. Others have described the faint sound of piano music drifting through the night, often emanating from abandoned cabins or invisible locations along the riverbank. The music is soft, melancholic, and impossible to trace, as if it were played by unseen hands, recalling moments of lost time. Whispered voices, snippets of conversation, and occasional shouts seem to rise and fall with the wind, creating the impression that the river holds the memories of those who once walked its banks. Locals suggest these sounds are echoes of lives interrupted, the souls of settlers, travelers, or even children who perished along the river, reaching out to the living through sound and sensation. Visual phenomena often accompany these auditory experiences. Glowing lights have been reported hovering above the river at night, sometimes moving slowly along the current or drifting toward the riverbank. Witnesses describe the lights as lantern-like orbs, flickering with an unnatural steadiness. Some interpret them as spiritual guides, perhaps helping lost souls find their way, while others see them as warnings, urging observers to stay clear of dangerous areas. The lights are often most vivid in foggy conditions or under moonlight, giving the river a surreal, almost otherworldly quality. Those who have experienced both the lights and the sounds describe a sense of continuity between the two, as if the spirits communicate through multiple senses simultaneously. Shadowy figures on horseback are occasionally reported along sections of the river, near old trails or overgrown paths. These riders, sometimes glimpsed only briefly, appear to move in slow, deliberate procession. The combination of mist, low visibility, and the sound of hooves striking soft ground often creates a chilling effect for witnesses. Some stories connect these figures to patrols or settlers who once guarded or traversed the river, their spirits continuing routines long after death. Encounters with these spectral riders are often accompanied by sudden cold drafts, a sensation of being observed, or even the faint smell of wood smoke or leather, enhancing the eerie realism of the experiences. One vivid account comes from a couple camping near an isolated bend of the Sabine River. Just after sunset, they noticed a faint glow across the water, and as they approached the riverbank, a shadowy figure emerged from the mist. Moments later, soft piano notes began to drift through the trees, distant but unmistakable. The figure remained at the water's edge, motionless, as if observing them, before vanishing with the mist. The couple later recounted hearing faint laughter and murmured whispers that seemed to circle them as they retreated to their campsite. They left the river that night unsettled, convinced that the spirits of the past were present and aware of those who wandered too close. Local folklore has long reinforced the Sabine River's haunted character. Stories speak of settlers who drowned while trying to cross, travelers lost to sudden floods, and children who perished along its shores. Abandoned cabins and forgotten cemeteries stand as silent witnesses, where ghostly lights and sounds are often reported. Many locals advise caution when exploring the river at night or in fog, emphasizing that the experiences are more than superstition. They are encounters with the lingering presence of those who have never fully left the river's side. The Rio Grande, stretching along the border of South Texas and Mexico, is more than a rivulet. It's a living chronicle of centuries of human history, hardship, and survival. Its wide, winding waters have been a source of sustenance, trade, and transportation for countless generations. Yet they have also claimed lives, swallowed travelers, and borne witness to conflict and migration. Over time, the Rio Grande has gained a reputation as a haunted waterway, where the past lingers in the fog and the present is never quite separate from the echoes of those who came before. Visitors to its banks report ghostly phenomena, spectral figures crossing in the morning mist, children playing where none are present, and sudden cold drafts sweeping over the water, as if the river itself grieves for those it has claimed. The haunting presence of the Rio Grande is tied closely to its long and complex history. Indigenous peoples first navigated its waters, fishing, trading, and settling along its banks. Later, Spanish explorers, settlers, and traders relied on the river as a lifeline through an often harsh and unforgiving landscape. Its currents proved treacherous. Sudden floods, hidden sandbars, and swift undercurrents claimed lives even as the river provided passage. During periods of conflict and border disputes, the river also witnessed skirmishes, raids, and the movement of armies. Many of those who perished along its shores were never recovered, leaving their presence lingering in folklore and the collective memory of the region. Visitors often describe humanoid shapes moving slowly through the mist, sometimes emerging from the water as if walking across its surface. These figures are indistinct, appearing almost translucent, and vanish as quickly as they appear. Witnesses often report an eerie feeling of being watched, a quiet tension that makes the hair on the back of the neck stand on end. Some speculate that these are spirits of travelers, settlers, or refugees who perished trying to navigate the river, eternally retracing their journeys in the hazy dawn or twilight hours. Ghostly children are another frequent occurrence. Along quiet stretches of the river, visitors have reported hearing laughter, splashes, and the soft patter of feet on sand and gravel. Shadows of small figures sometimes appear, playing along the banks or near abandoned riverfront structures. These figures often vanish when approached, leaving behind only the faint sound of running water or the echo of a distant giggle. Locals suggest these apparitions represent children lost to the river's currents, victims of accidents or disease, whose spirits linger near the water's edge, caught between the living and the dead. Cold drafts and sudden drops in temperature are commonly reported along the Rio Grande, even during warm South Texas evenings. Walkers and campers along the river often feel a chill that seems to move with intention, brushing past them or surrounding them in moments of quiet reflection. Some describe these drafts as accompanying sightings of figures in the mist, or whispers carried on the wind. The effect is disorienting and tangible, as if the river itself is mourning the lives it has claimed. Witnesses describe an overwhelming feeling of sorrow and presence, a sense that the boundary between the living and the dead is thinner here than anywhere else. Auditory phenomena along the river are equally chilling. Many report hearing distant voices or murmurs, some faint and indecipherable, others forming words of warning or grief. Travelers recount whispers carried across the water, names called softly, or cries echoing from areas where no one is present. Occasionally, the sound of splashing or the faint murmur of footsteps can be heard from the riverbanks, even when the area is completely deserted. These sounds are often accompanied by visual phenomenal lights in the fog, fleeting shadows, or glimmers of movement along the banks. The combination of sound and sight creates an immersive, haunting experience, making it clear why the Rio Grande has earned its spectral reputation. One particularly vivid account comes from a group of hikers exploring a remote bend in the river near sunrise. As morning mist rose from the water, they noticed faint human shapes emerging from the fog, moving slowly toward the opposite bank. Moments later, they heard the faint laughter of children, carried across the water, accompanied by a sudden, chilling breeze that made them shiver, despite the early warmth of the day. The figures vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving only the gentle ripple of the river and the lingering impression of something otherworldly. Even hours later, the hikers reported feeling an inexplicable heaviness in the air, as if the spirits of the past had imprinted themselves upon the river and its surroundings. Local folklore reinforces the haunting of the Rio Grande. Stories speak of settlers swept away by sudden currents, travelers lost while attempting to cross, and children who drowned near the banks. These tales often serve as cautionary reminders of the river's power, but they also reflect a belief that those who perished remain tied to the water, replaying their final journeys or lingering near familiar sites. Abandoned structures, old docks, and forgotten trails are often associated with sightings of spectral figures, reinforcing the impression that history and memory are embedded in the landscape itself. The Neches River, winding through the pine-covered landscapes of East Texas, is more than a natural waterway. It is a silent witness to centuries of human activity, conflict, and tragedy. Its waters have nourished communities, supported trade, and provided a route for settlers and travelers. Yet beneath its placid surface lies a darker history, one marked by drownings, violent encounters, and the countless lives that have been lost along its banks. Over time, the river has earned a reputation for being haunted. Visitors and locals alike have reported strange phenomena, glowing lights hovering above the water, shadowy figures glimpsed among the trees, and whispers that seem to call out for help from unseen mouths. These experiences have created an enduring legend, portraying the Neches River as a place where the past is never truly gone. The river's haunting is rooted in its long and often perilous history. Early Native American communities relied on its waters for fishing and transportation, navigating its currents with skill and caution. Later, European settlers, traders, and pioneers used the river as a lifeline through the dense forests of East Texas, often underestimating its sudden shifts in depth and current. Floods, submerged snags, and unpredictable rapids claimed lives, leaving bodies lost to the river. Accounts of violent encounters along the banks also abound, from skirmishes between rival groups to disputes among settlers or hunters. These events created a legacy of tragedy, and locals have long believed that the souls of those lost along the river remain tethered to its waters, unable to move on. One of the most frequently reported phenomena along the Neches River is the appearance of glowing lights hovering over the water. Witnesses describe small orbs of light that float just above the river's surface, sometimes moving slowly with the current and other times drifting against it. These lights often appear in the early morning mist or after sunset, their glow visible across stretches of water where no human presence is nearby. Locals speculate that these lights may represent lanterns carried by lost travelers or the spirits of those who perished in the river, eternally retracing their journeys. Those who witness the lights often report a mix of awe and unease, as if the river itself is alive, guiding or warning those who come too close. Shadowy figures are another common occurrence along the Neches. Visitors describe seeing vague human shapes moving among the trees lining the riverbank, appearing for only a moment before vanishing into the darkness. Some are said to resemble settlers, hunters, or travelers from long ago, their movements deliberate and purposeful. Others appear more ethereal, flickering like shadows in the moonlight or mist. Many describe sudden feelings of cold, hairs rising on the back of the neck, or the sensation of a brush against the skin, as though unseen hands are reaching out to them. Auditory experiences are also common along the Neches River. Visitors often report hearing faint cries, whispers, or calls for help echoing from the water or from dense patches of trees. Some describe hearing voices calling their names or faint pleas for assistance carried on the wind. Others report distant sounds of splashing, as if someone is struggling in the river, even when no one is nearby. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena creates a haunting, immersive experience, leaving witnesses with a strong impression that the river is alive with memory and sorrow. One particularly chilling account comes from a group of campers who spent a night near a remote bend of the river. Moments later, shadowy figures emerged along the riverbank, their forms indistinct but unmistakably human in shape. The campers reported hearing soft whispers, as if multiple voices were calling out, and a sudden gust of cold air swept through the clearing. The figures and lights vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving the campers shaken, yet aware that they had witnessed something beyond explanation. The next morning, The river seemed ordinary, serene, and still, belying the eerie events of the previous night. Glowing lights and shadowy figures are often reported near sites of known historical tragedies, including areas where drownings or violent encounters occurred. Old trails, forgotten cabins, and river crossings are said to be particularly active. Locals advise caution, emphasizing that the river's haunting is not merely folklore. Many believe that those who died in tragic or violent circumstances remain tied to the netches, their spirits replaying moments of fear, despair, or unresolved struggle. In this sense, the river functions as both a boundary and a conduit, connecting the living to the memories of the departed. Paranormal investigators have documented numerous occurrences along the netches. Cameras and audio devices have captured unexplained lights, whispers, and fleeting shapes. Witnesses report sudden drops in temperature, the sensation of being followed, and the unmistakable feeling of another presence in secluded areas. While skeptics attribute these experiences to environmental factors or imagination, the consistency and variety of accounts over decades suggest a persistent phenomenon, one that refuses to be fully explained. The Red River, forming a natural boundary between Texas and Oklahoma, has long been a corridor of history, conflict, and human passage. Its broad waters and winding course have witnessed centuries of life, struggle, and tragedy. From early Native American settlements to the movement of settlers, traders, and soldiers, the river has served as both lifeline and obstacle. Over time, its banks became sites of skirmishes, battles, and encounters that claimed countless lives. Today, the Red River is as well known for its haunted reputation as for its scenic beauty. Visitors and locals alike have reported ghostly phenomena, spectral cavalry riding along the riverbanks, sudden fogs that appear without warning, and faint echoes of battle cries carried across the water. The river seems to hold the memory of those who once fought, wandered, and died along its shores, preserving their presence in ways that defy explanation. Much of the haunting along the Red River is linked to its Civil War history and the conflicts that took place along its banks. Confederate soldiers and Union scouts passed through the area, while Native American tribes, including the Comanche and Cherokee, also relied on the river for sustenance and defense. Skirmishes, ambushes, and accidents were common, and many who perished in these conflicts were never recovered, leaving their spirits tethered to the river. Local legend suggests that the soldier's duty and the warrior's honor bind them to the banks, replaying moments of their lives through spectral reenactments or silent observation. Witnesses frequently report seeing spectral cavalry moving along the riverbanks. These figures often appear at dusk or in the early morning fog, riding silently yet purposefully along trails long abandoned. Horses and riders are described as shadowy forms, occasionally detailed enough to reveal Confederate uniforms, weapons, or Native American attire. The figures often vanish when approached, leaving only the faint impression of movement or the soft echo of hooves against the earth. Some visitors have claimed to hear commands shouted across the river, the sound of sabers clashing, or the distant rumble of artillery, though no living source exists. These sightings create an intense feeling of history pressing forward into the present, as if the river is replaying events that once shaped the region. Eerie fog is another hallmark of the Red River's haunted character. The mist often rises suddenly, enveloping the banks and river in a thick, rolling haze. Those caught within it report disorientation, a sudden drop in temperature, and a strange, heavy silence that amplifies any sound. Within the fog, figures have been seen, moving slowly and deliberately, sometimes disappearing entirely when the wind shifts. Locals suggest that this fog acts as a veil between the living and the dead, a medium through which the spirits of the past manifest. Witnesses often describe the sensation of being observed or guided by unseen presences while in the fog, adding to the river's reputation as a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is fragile. Auditory phenomena are equally common along the Red River. Visitors report faint echoes of battle cries, clashing weapons, and shouted commands drifting across the water, often without a visible source. Some claim to hear the soft sound of hoofbeats approaching along deserted trails, footsteps on leaf-strewn banks, or the low murmur of Native American chants carried on the wind. The combination of sight and sound often intensifies the sense of presence, leaving observers with an unmistakable feeling that history is unfolding before them, just out of reach. Even when no figures are visible, the echoes and whispers make it clear that the river is far from empty. One memorable account comes from a group of hikers exploring a remote bend in the river near sunset. As fog rolled in, they noticed shadowy forms moving along the opposite bank. At first indistinct, the figures gradually appeared to be mounted cavalry, riders in period uniforms, slowly making their way through the mist. The hikers reported hearing distant shouts and the soft clatter of hooves, accompanied by a sudden chill that swept over them. The figures disappeared as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving only the fog and the echoing sound of the river flowing over rocks. The hikers left the area unnerved but convinced that they had encountered something beyond the ordinary, a lingering trace of the river's tumultuous past. Other accounts describe solitary figures moving along abandoned trails, often at night. Shadowy Native American spirits are reported walking silently through the trees or standing by the water's edge, observing those who approach. Witnesses sometimes feel an overwhelming sense of history, a weight of sorrow and duty that seems to emanate from the river itself. Many locals treat the river with a degree of reverence, aware that these phenomena represent centuries of memory preserved in the land and water. The Red River's haunted reputation is reinforced by its many sites of historical tragedy. Battles, skirmishes, accidental deaths, and drownings all contribute to its spectral legacy. Abandoned trails, old ferry crossings, and remnants of settlements serve as focal points for paranormal activity. Flickering lights, shadowy figures, and inexplicable sounds have been reported consistently for decades, creating a persistent impression that the river itself is alive with memory. While skeptics attribute these events to imagination or environmental factors, the sheer consistency of witness accounts suggests that the Red River harbors something beyond ordinary explanation. The Lavaca River, winding quietly through the piney landscapes and farmland of South Texas, has long been a lifeline for the communities along its banks. Its waters have provided sustenance, transport, and fertile soil for settlers over centuries. Yet they have also claimed lives in ways both sudden and tragic. Stories of drownings, accidents at river crossings, and mysterious disappearances have woven themselves into the fabric of local history. Over time, these tragic events have given rise to tales of hauntings, where the river seems to remember those it has claimed. Visitors to the Lavaca River often report ghostly phenomena, faint lights floating above the water, sudden drops in temperature, and whispers in languages long forgotten, as if the river itself carries the echoes of lives lost long ago. The haunting of the Lavaca River is deeply tied to the struggles of early settlers. Families traveling the river in small boats or attempting to ford it during floods sometimes perished in its currents. Many of those who drowned were never recovered, leaving their presence lingering in local folklore. These tragedies became stories passed down through generations, tales of caution and remembrance, blending with the natural mystique of the river. The river's slow-moving waters, shaded by dense trees and hidden bends, lend an atmosphere of quiet solitude, a perfect setting for the legends of wandering spirits and spectral lights. Faint lights above the river are among the most frequently reported phenomena. These lights often appear near old river crossings or areas where accidents were known to have occurred. Witnesses suggest that the lights represent the spirits of settlers who perished in the river, eternally retracing their doomed journeys. The glow is subtle but unmistakable, a cold luminescence that casts soft reflections on the water and the trees lining the banks. Some have tried to approach the lights, only to watch them drift away or vanish entirely, leaving behind a sense of unease and lingering sadness. Sudden cold spots are another hallmark of the river's haunted nature. Even on warm South Texas evenings, visitors frequently report feeling a sharp chill sweep across their shoulders or the soles of their feet as they walk along the riverbank. These cold drafts often accompany sightings of lights or shadowy figures, reinforcing the impression that something unseen is present. Hikers, fishermen, and campers alike describe the sensation as heavy and localized, as if the air itself carries the weight of lost souls. The sudden temperature drops create an immersive, almost physical connection to the river's haunted past. A reminder that the waters have absorbed centuries of sorrow and tragedy. Whispers in languages long forgotten have also been reported along the Lavaca River. Visitors describe hearing murmurs that seem to come from the water itself or from the trees along the bank. The voices are often indistinct at first, soft and unintelligible, but sometimes phrases or names can be discerned. These whispers appear to echo across the river, fading as quickly as they arise, leaving listeners with a sense of being addressed by unseen presences. Some scholars and folklorists speculate that the murmurs reflect the diverse groups who settled the region, including Spanish, German, and French settlers, as well as Native American inhabitants. The voices serve as a haunting reminder that the river has witnessed countless lives, cultures, and tragedies, preserving their echoes in the stillness of its waters. Shadowy figures are also reported along the riverbanks, often emerging at night or during early morning fog. Witnesses describe indistinct human shapes, moving slowly along abandoned paths or standing silently near old crossings. Some appear to be wearing period clothing, carrying lanterns or tools, as if frozen in a moment of their daily lives. These figures vanish when approached, leaving only the rustle of leaves or a faint impression of movement. Many who encounter them report an unsettling feeling of being watched, a weight of history pressing down, as if the spirits are reliving their final moments and silently observing the living. One particularly vivid account comes from a group of campers who had set up near a remote bend of the Lavaca River. As twilight settled, a soft glow appeared above the water, drifting slowly with the current. Moments later, a shadowy figure emerged near an old crossing, barely visible through the rising mist. The campers reported hearing faint whispers, speaking in a language none could recognize, and a sudden chill that swept through the clearing. The figure disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only the gentle ripple of the river and the lingering sense of another presence. The campers described feeling a strange mix of awe and fear, as though they had glimpsed a memory frozen in time, preserved by the river itself. Local folklore has long reinforced these tales of haunting. Stories speak of settlers who drowned while attempting to cross the river, travelers lost to sudden floods, and families who experienced unexplained misfortune along the riverbanks. Abandoned cabins, old ferries, and forgotten trails are often cited as focal points for paranormal activity. The presence of lights, whispers, and sudden cold spots are considered more than superstition. They are seen as the lingering imprints of lives cut short, echoes of sorrow and remembrance carried on the water. Sabine Lake, straddling the border of Texas and Louisiana in Jefferson County, is a vast estuary where freshwater rivers meet the Gulf, creating a rich and often treacherous environment for those who have navigated its waters. Over the centuries, the lake has been the site of countless fishing expeditions, shipping ventures, and river crossings. Its calm appearance belies a history of sudden storms, strong currents, and hidden underwater hazards. Many who ventured too far or underestimated the lake's power never returned. Over time, these tragedies have given rise to tales of hauntings, where ghostly fishermen and spectral activity persist long after the sun sets. Locals and visitors alike have reported eerie phenomena, lights hovering over the water, the sound of fishing nets being cast reels, spinning in boats with no occupants, and shadowy figures moving along the shoreline, as if the lake itself preserves the memory of those it claimed. The haunting of Sabine Lake is deeply rooted in its maritime and fishing history. For generations, local fishermen relied on the estuary for sustenance and commerce, often working alone or in small crews. Storms could arise without warning, and strong tidal currents could sweep even the most experienced boatmen away from safety. Those who perished were sometimes carried out into the open water, their bodies lost to the lake. Over time, stories of missing fishermen, lost crews, and ghostly apparitions became common in local folklore, blending tragedy with a sense of the uncanny. Even today, Many who work or explore the lake at night report feeling that it is not empty, that some presence lingers among the mist and waves. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the appearance of ghostly lights hovering above the water. Witnesses describe small orbs, flickering lanterns, or soft glows that drift along the surface or hang over channels where the water is deepest. These lights are often reported in the early hours, before dawn or during foggy evenings, appearing to move with intent or sometimes standing still as if waiting. Many believe these lights are the spirits of fishermen who are lost to the lake, eternally retracing their final journeys or signaling for help from beyond. Attempting to approach the lights is often futile. They vanish suddenly or drift away, leaving behind only the shimmering reflection on the water's surface and a lingering sense of awe. Visitors frequently report auditory phenomena that cannot be explained. The sounds of nets being cast, reels spinning, or soft footsteps on wooden decks are often heard, even when no living person is present. Some fishermen claim to hear distant calls to the shore, shouts of assistance, or the faint splash of oars striking water. These sounds are sometimes accompanied by the appearance of shadowy figures, briefly visible along the shoreline or in empty boats. The combination of sound and sight creates a hauntingly immersive experience, as though the lake itself is replaying fragments of its history for those who venture near after dark. Shadowy figures are another hallmark of the lake's haunted reputation. Witnesses describe human-shaped forms moving silently along docks, boat launches, or shallow banks. Occasionally, these figures appear to be engaged in familiar tasks, casting nets, hauling in lines, or rowing boats, only to vanish when approached. Some appear dressed in period clothing, from early 20th century fishing attire to older garb from the days of steamboats and river trade. The impression is of a liminal world, where time overlaps and the labor of the past continues unseen. Many who encounter these figures report feeling a chill, a sense of being watched, or the inexplicable presence of others nearby, reinforcing the notion that the lake is inhabited by spirits who never reached safety. One particularly vivid account comes from a night fisherman who had set out alone on the lake. As fog rolled across the water, he saw a soft, glowing light ahead, bobbing gently on the surface. Moments later, he heard the faint sound of a net being cast and the subtle creak of a reel turning. When he approached the source, the glow vanished, and the boat he had glimpsed moments before was empty. The fisherman described an overwhelming sense of sadness and awe, as though he had witnessed the persistence of lives trapped between water and shore. Replaying the final moments of a long-forgotten night, Sabine Lake's haunted reputation is reinforced by local legends and historical accounts. Stories of fishermen lost in sudden storms, riverboats swallowed by currents, and lone travelers disappearing on foggy nights contribute to the sense that the lake remembers its past. Abandoned docks, old fishing huts, and forgotten piers are often focal points for reported paranormal activity. The presence of spectral lights, mysterious sounds, and shadowy figures serves as both a warning and a testament to the lake, as enduring connection to those who worked and perished upon it. The lake's misty, reflective waters amplify the haunting atmosphere. Fog can rise quickly, reducing visibility to a few feet and casting familiar surroundings into a dreamlike, otherworldly landscape. Within this haze, lights appear brighter, shadows stretch unnaturally, and even ordinary sounds seem amplified and distorted. Many visitors describe a surreal feeling of being simultaneously present and removed from the natural world, as though the spirits of the past have momentarily opened a window into their realm. The Brazos River, stretching through the heart of Texas, carries centuries of history along its winding banks. In the Waco section, the river has long been a site of both life and tragedy. Its waters have provided sustenance, transportation, and recreation for countless generations. Yet they have also claimed lives in sudden accidents, drownings, and misadventures. Over time, these tragedies have given rise to tales of haunting, with locals and visitors reporting ghostly phenomena that defy explanation. From shadowy figures near old bridges to mysterious lights floating above the water, and phantom cries echoing across the river at night. The Brazos seems to hold the memory of those lost along its banks, replaying fragments of the past for those who venture close. The Waco section of the river has a long history of both settlement and peril. Early pioneers and settlers used the river for travel and irrigation, often constructing rudimentary bridges and ferries to navigate its currents. These crossings, while essential, were sometimes treacherous. Sudden floods, hidden debris, and slippery banks claimed the lives of travelers and locals alike. Some of the most haunting stories involve people swept away near old bridges or drowned while attempting to ford the river during high waters. Those who perished in these accidents were sometimes never recovered, leaving the river to carry their presence indefinitely. Over time, these incidents became stories passed down through generations, tales of caution and remembrance, forming the foundation of the Waco section's reputation as haunted. One of the most frequently reported phenomena along this stretch of the Brazos River is the appearance of ghostly figures near old bridges. Witnesses describe vague human shapes that seem to emerge from the river's edge or from the mist rising above the water. These figures are often indistinct at first, appearing as shadows against the trees or the moonlit water. Some observers report seeing them dressed in period clothing, long coats, hats, or work attire typical of settlers and laborers from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The figures often linger near bridge railings or along worn paths leading to the water, sometimes standing motionless as though waiting for someone or something. Approaching these apparitions frequently results in their disappearance, leaving only a lingering chill and the soft murmur of the river. Floating lights above the water are another hallmark of the Waco Brazos River haunting. These lights are often described as small orbs or lantern-like glows that drift across the river's surface. Sometimes they rise and fall with the mist, moving in ways that defy natural currents. Many believe these lights are the spirits of those who lost their lives in river accidents, forever retracing their doomed journeys or signaling for help from the beyond. Witnesses often describe a sense of awe mixed with unease when observing these lights, as though the river itself is aware of their presence and is conveying a silent message. Attempts to follow or approach the lights usually prove futile. They vanish abruptly, leaving only reflections dancing across the water. Auditory experiences along the river are equally chilling. Phantom cries and distant shouts are commonly reported, echoing across the water on quiet nights. Some say these sounds are pleas for help from those who drowned or warnings from spirits trying to prevent others from meeting a similar fate. Other accounts include the faint splash of feet or oars in the water, the creak of an old bridge under non-existent weight, or murmurs carried on the wind that seem to call out names. These auditory phenomena often accompany sightings of lights or shadowy figures, creating a hauntingly immersive experience that leaves witnesses with a deep impression of presence and history intertwined. Shadowy figures are not limited to the riverbanks or bridges. Visitors have reported seeing apparitions moving along trails near the water, vanishing into the trees or mist. Sometimes these figures appear to be performing ordinary tasks, walking along the edge of the river, searching for something, or pausing to look across the water. The presence of these figures is often accompanied by sudden cold spots, goosebumps, and a sense of being watched. Those who have encountered them describe the experience as both unnerving and solemn, as if they are glimpsing a memory preserved by the river itself. One memorable account comes from a night fisherman who had stayed late near an old bridge crossing. As fog settled across the water, he saw a faint light hovering above the river, accompanied by the distant sound of splashing and murmured voices. Moments later, a shadowy figure emerged near the bridge, standing motionless before slowly fading back into the mist. The fisherman described a heavy chill and a sense of profound sorrow, as if the river were revealing the lingering presence of lives lost long ago. The apparition and light disappeared completely before he could move closer, leaving only the sounds of the flowing water. Local folklore and historical accounts reinforce these haunted experiences. Stories speak of settlers lost to floods, travelers swept away near bridges, and families who experienced unexplained misfortunes along the river. Abandoned paths, old ferries, and remnants of early crossings often serve as focal points for reported paranormal activity. The presence of ghostly lights, phantom cries, and shadowy figures is seen not as mere superstition but as the lingering imprint of those whose lives ended tragically in the river's currents. The Sabine River, winding through the dense forests and wetlands of Orange County, Texas, has long been a lifeline for those who settled its banks. Its waters have provided sustenance, transport, and timber resources for generations, yet they have also claimed countless lives. Early loggers, settlers, and travelers faced the river's unpredictable currents, sudden storms, and hidden dangers. Many who ventured too far never returned, leaving behind only whispers of their existence. Over time, these tragedies became the foundation for local legends and reports of paranormal activity. Along the Orange section of the Sabine River, visitors describe ghostly lights hovering above the water, shadowy forms moving silently through the trees, and the eerie sound of footsteps on otherwise empty riverbanks. The river seems to remember every life it has touched, replaying the presence of those lost long ago. This section of the Sabine River has a long history tied to the timber industry. Logging was once a dangerous but vital occupation, with men working to fell trees, transport logs, and operate sawmills along the riverbanks. Accidents were common, whether from falling trees, unstable river crossings, or sudden floods that swept workers downstream. Settlers and travelers navigating the river in small boats or rafts faced similar risks. Many disappeared without a trace, and stories of missing individuals were woven into local lore. Over time, the natural beauty of the area, thick forests, meandering currents, and misty river bends combined with these tales of misfortune, creating an atmosphere ripe for ghostly stories. One of the most frequently reported phenomena along this stretch of the Sabine River is the appearance of glowing orbs. Visitors describe small, luminescent spheres that hover just above the water or drift through the trees along the banks. These lights often appear during foggy mornings, twilight, or late at night, glowing softly with an otherworldly hue. Witnesses suggest that these orbs represent the spirits of those lost to the river, eternally retracing their last journeys. Some report that the lights appear near old logging sites, river crossings, or abandoned cabins, as if marking places of past tragedy. Attempting to approach these orbs usually proves futile. They vanish suddenly, leaving behind only the impression of their brief presence and a soft reflection of light on the river's surface. Shadowy forms moving through the trees are another hallmark of haunting in the Orange section. Visitors often describe vague human shapes slipping silently among the dense undergrowth, their movements fluid yet unnatural. These figures are frequently seen along narrow trails or near the riverbank, where they seem to be performing ordinary tasks, walking, bending, or searching for something unseen. Witnesses often feel a chill or a sudden sense of being watched when these apparitions appear, and when approached, the figures vanish into the darkness, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Some speculate that these shadows are the lingering presence of loggers or settlers who met untimely ends, repeating their final moments in an endless loop. Auditory phenomena are equally common along this stretch of the river. Many visitors report hearing footsteps along the banks when no one is present. The sound of logs shifting in the current, or the faint creak of a structure long abandoned. Some describe hearing distant voices or murmurs, indistinct but carrying a tone of urgency or distress. Others have reported the sound of tools clanging or chopping in the trees, echoing as if the river preserves not only the memory of people but also the work they once performed. These sounds often coincide with sightings of orbs or shadowy figures, creating a hauntingly immersive experience that feels both tangible and ephemeral. One particularly striking account comes from a group of hikers who explored a remote bend of the Sabine River late in the evening. As the sun set, a soft, glowing light appeared above the water, drifting slowly along the current. Moments later, shadowy forms emerged among the trees lining the bank, moving silently but deliberately toward the river. The hikers reported hearing faint footsteps on the riverbank and the distant sound of a chopping axe. Even though no one else was present, The light and shadows disappeared as quickly as they had appeared, leaving only the whisper of the wind through the trees and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. The hikers described a mixture of fear and awe, as though they had glimpsed the persistent echoes of lives long past. Local folklore reinforces the river's haunted reputation. Stories of loggers lost in floods, settlers swept away during storms, and travelers disappearing on misty nights have been passed down through generations. Abandoned cabins, old docks, and remnants of logging operations often serve as focal points for reported paranormal activity. The combination of spectral lights, shadowy figures, and auditory phenomena suggests that the river is far more than a natural landscape. It is a corridor of memory and lingering presence. The San Marcos River, winding through the heart of Texas Hill Country, is famed for its crystal-clear waters, lush surroundings, and historic crossings. For centuries, it has been a lifeline for settlers, travelers, and native communities, providing water, food, and a means of passage across the rugged landscape. Yet, beneath its tranquil surface lies a history steeped in tragedy, loss, and lingering presence. Over the years, locals and visitors alike have reported strange phenomena along the river's banks. Ghostly figures of early settlers appear near old stone bridges. Phantom children are said to play along the shore, and unexplained lights hover in the mist that rises from the water at dawn or twilight. These accounts suggest that the river carries not only the memory of the land, but also the echoes of lives long past. The San Marcos River was an essential resource for early settlers in the region. Stone bridges and simple wooden crossings allowed people and livestock to traverse its clear waters. But these structures were not always safe. Sudden floods, slippery rocks, and treacherous currents claimed countless lives, leaving families bereft and communities wary of the river's quiet danger. Many who drowned or disappeared were never recovered, and over time, their absence became a part of the river's story. Today, visitors who explore the banks often report a lingering sense of being watched or accompanied, as if the spirits of those who perished still traverse the paths and bridges they once used. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the appearance of ghostly figures near old stone bridges. Witnesses describe translucent forms standing or walking across the arches, sometimes pausing mid-step as if aware of the observer's presence. Some of these figures are said to resemble settlers from the 19th century, dressed in period clothing, carrying tools or baskets, or guiding livestock. Approaching the apparitions often results in them fading into the air or disappearing into the mist that rises from the river, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Many who have seen them describe an overwhelming mixture of awe, fear, and reverence, as if witnessing a memory preserved in the air and water. Phantom children are another frequent occurrence along the San Marcos River. Visitors report glimpsing small, shadowy figures playing near the banks or skipping stones across the water. Their laughter, soft but distinct, is sometimes heard echoing over the current, even when the area is completely empty. These children are often described as fleeting glimpses, darting in and out of view, disappearing behind trees or into low fog. Some believe these figures are the spirits of children lost to the river victims of accidents or disease who continue to replay moments of playfulness along the shore. Witnesses often report feeling an inexplicable mix of warmth and sadness in their presence, a reminder of life, cut short but never forgotten. Unexplained lights are another hallmark of the San Marcos River's haunting. Early morning fog or twilight mist often reveals small glows above the water, drifting slowly along the current or hovering near the banks. Witnesses describe these lights as lantern-like orbs or faint, flickering flames that seem suspended in midair. Some appear to move with intent, following the river's path, while others remain stationary, illuminating a particular stretch of water or a bridge. Many speculate that these lights mark locations of historical tragedy, guiding visitors to places where lives were lost, or perhaps representing the spirits themselves, unable to move on from the river they loved or feared. Attempts to approach or capture the lights often result in them vanishing as if swallowed by the mist, leaving only a lingering sense of mystery. Auditory phenomena further reinforce the river's haunted reputation. Visitors often report hearing footsteps along empty banks, the soft creak of wood from abandoned bridges, or distant voices calling across the water. These sounds frequently coincide with visual sightings, amplifying the sense of another presence nearby. Some describe hearing the echo of settlers' daily activities, from the clatter of tools and wagons to whispered conversations. Others hear the faint patter of children running along the shore. These auditory experiences often create a feeling of immersion in the past, as if the river itself is replaying moments frozen in time. One particularly striking account comes from a kayaker exploring the river at dawn. As the mist rose over the surface, she noticed a faint light hovering above a stone bridge. Approaching cautiously, she saw the silhouette of a figure walking along the bridge, carrying what appeared to be a small bundle. At the same time, she heard the soft laughter of children near the riverbank, though no one was visible. The figure on the bridge vanished as she drifted closer, and the laughter faded with the rising sun. The kayaker described the experience as both unsettling and mesmerizing, a moment when history and the supernatural seemed to converge. Local folklore and historical records contribute to the San Marcos River's haunted reputation. Tales of settlers lost to sudden floods, children swept away in high water, and travelers who vanished during river crossings have been passed down for generations. Many of the locations tied to these stone bridges, shallow crossings, and river bends serve as focal points for paranormal activity. Visitors often report a combination of ghostly figures, unexplained lights, and disembodied sounds that seem to preserve the memory of the river's past inhabitants. The Guadalupe River, flowing through the scenic hill country around Kerrville, Texas, has long been admired for its clear waters, limestone banks, and winding paths through rolling hills. For centuries, it has provided sustenance, transportation, and recreation for settlers, travelers, and indigenous peoples. Yet, beneath its calm surface and serene banks, the river carries a history filled with tragedy, loss, and lingering presence. Along the Kerrville section, visitors have reported eerie phenomena that suggest the river remembers every life it has touched. Spectral canoeists glide silently through morning fog. Mysterious lights hover over the water, and many feel the unshakable sensation of being watched by unseen eyes along the banks. These reports hint at a haunting that is both subtle and persistent, a reminder that the Guadalupe River preserves the echoes of its past. The Kerrville section of the Guadalupe River was historically a vital passage for settlers and travelers. Stone crossings, small ferries, and narrow banks allowed people and livestock to navigate its waters. Yet the river could turn dangerous without warning. Sudden floods, submerged rocks, and swift currents claimed countless lives, leaving families grieving and travelers wary. Many who perished were never recovered, their absence woven into local memory and stories. Over time, these tragic events formed the foundation of the Guadalupe River's reputation as a haunted site, with the river itself acting as a silent witness to the passage of time and the lives it had claimed. One of the most commonly reported phenomena along the Kerrville section is the sighting of spectral canoeists. Visitors describe ghostly figures gliding across the water in old-fashioned canoes or small boats, paddling silently as mist rolls off the river's surface. These apparitions often appear at dawn, when fog hangs low, or during twilight, when the fading light gives the river an ethereal glow. Witnesses frequently describe the figures as wearing period clothing, sometimes appearing to be early settlers, travelers, or even river guides from the 19th century. The canoeists often move deliberately and steadily, occasionally pausing as if acknowledging the presence of onlookers before vanishing into the mist. Many who have seen them report a mixture of awe and unease, sensing that these spirits are bound to the river, replaying their journeys from life into death. Unexplained lights are another hallmark of haunting along this stretch of the Guadalupe. Small orbs or lantern-like glows often hover just above the water or drift along the banks, moving independently of wind or current. Some witnesses report lights rising and falling in height, as if searching for something, while others describe them remaining stationary near old river crossings or tree-lined bends. These lights often appear in tandem with sightings of the spectral canoeists, or during moments of sudden fog, creating a surreal, almost cinematic atmosphere. Many believe these lights mark places where lives were lost, or where the river's history is most deeply etched into the landscape, serving as beacons of remembrance for those who never returned. Auditory experiences along the Guadalupe River contribute further to its haunted reputation. Visitors frequently report hearing the soft splash of a paddle or the gentle lapping of water against a canoe, even when the river appears empty. Some describe distant voices, sometimes calling names or offering warnings carried over the water by the wind. Others hear the faint sound of footsteps along the riverbank, the creak of a wooden bridge, or whispers that seem to drift from the trees. These sounds often coincide with visual phenomena, reinforcing the sense that the river preserves the memory of those who traversed, labored, and occasionally perished along its waters. Shadowy figures are also a common sight along the banks. Observers report silhouettes slipping between trees, pausing near the water, or vanishing into the mist. Some appear to be walking along old paths, while others seem to be fishing or observing the river silently. Witnesses often experience sudden drops in temperature, goosebumps, or an unshakable feeling of being watched when these figures are nearby. Many describe the experience as heavy with emotion, as if the river is revealing a fragment of history, frozen in the present. One particularly memorable account comes from a morning canoe trip. As fog rolled along the water, a lone kayaker noticed a faint glow drifting across the river. Moments later, a canoe appeared, seemingly emerging from the mist, with a figure gliding silently along its length. The kayaker heard the soft splash of a paddle and a faint murmur that resembled a voice calling out, though no one else was visible. As the canoe drew nearer, it slowly vanished into the fog, leaving the kayaker with a lingering chill and a profound sense of witnessing something timeless. Local folklore and historical accounts reinforce these eerie experiences. Stories of settlers lost to floods, travelers swept away while crossing the river, and early fishermen who never returned have been told for generations. Abandoned river crossings, old cabins, and forgotten pathways often serve as focal points for reported paranormal activity. The combination of ghostly canoeists, floating lights, and shadowy figures creates an enduring mystique, suggesting that the Guadalupe River is not merely a body of water, but a corridor of memory and presence, where the past persists in subtle and haunting ways. The Brazos River, winding through the fertile lands of Fort Bend County, Texas, has long been a source of life and legend. Its wide waters have nourished settlers, farmers, and travelers for centuries. Yet beneath its serene surface lie countless stories of tragedy and loss. The Fort Bend section, in particular, is steeped in reports of paranormal activity, drawing curiosity and apprehension from locals and visitors alike. Floating lights, ghostly fishermen, and moving shadows are commonly reported, along with accounts of faces appearing in the water, reflections of those who never returned. The river seems to carry not only the currents of water, but also the echoes of lives forever entwined with its flow. The Brazos River was historically a lifeline for the region. Early settlers relied on it for water, transportation, and food. Canoes and small boats glided along its banks, ferrying people and supplies across its often unpredictable waters. But the river could be treacherous. Sudden floods, swift currents, and hidden sandbars claimed countless lives, leaving families and communities to mourn and wonder. Some who ventured into the river were never seen again, swallowed by the current or lost in the surrounding wetlands. Over time, these tragedies became the foundation of local legends, and the river developed a reputation as a place where the past lingers, visible to those sensitive to its hidden echoes. One of the most frequently reported phenomena along this stretch of the Brazos River is the appearance of floating lights. Witnesses describe small orbs, glowing softly, hovering just above the water, or drifting along the river's course. These lights are often seen in the early morning fog or late at night, when the water reflects the dim, ambient glow. Some observers believe these lights represent the spirits of fishermen or settlers who perished in the river. eternally retracing the movements they once made in life. Attempts to approach the lights often fail. They drift away silently, leaving only a faint shimmer and the unsettling impression that the river itself is alive with memory. Ghostly fishermen are another common sight along the Fort Bend section. Visitors report figures standing silently along the banks or gliding in small boats across the calm surface. These apparitions often resemble local fishermen from past generations, sometimes holding rods or tending nets, repeating familiar motions as if trapped in an endless loop of labor. Many who have witnessed them describe a feeling of deep melancholy, a sense that these spirits are bound to the river, unable to move on from the waters that claimed them. Occasionally, observers report hearing the soft splash of a paddle or the faint tinkle of a fishing line, even when no living person is present. Shadows moving independently of trees or other natural elements are another hallmark of the river's hauntings. Observers have described dark forms gliding along the banks or appearing among reeds and brush, seemingly aware of those watching. These figures often vanish when approached, leaving behind only the whisper of wind or the ripple of water. Some locals suggest these shadows are the residual energy of past tragedies, lingering in the environment like echoes trapped in time. Others believe they may be protective spirits, guiding or warning the living of unseen dangers along the river. Perhaps the most chilling reports involve faces appearing in the water itself. Witnesses recount moments when the calm river's surface seems to reflect something more than the surrounding trees and sky. In fleeting, distorted images, faces of men, women, and children appear, staring up at observers as if pleading to be remembered. These apparitions often coincide with other phenomena, such as ghostly fishermen or floating lights, reinforcing the sense that the river preserves the memory of those lost. Many who have experienced this report a deep sense of sorrow or awe, sensing that the river itself mourns for lives claimed by its currents. Auditory phenomena are also prevalent along the Fort Bend stretch. Footsteps are often heard along the riverbanks, even when no one is present, and the soft sound of splashing water suggests someone or something moving unseen. Whispered voices, faint laughter, or distant calls have been reported by visitors and locals alike, often carrying over the river in the stillness of early morning or late evening. These sounds frequently coincide with visual experiences, creating a hauntingly immersive environment that blurs the line between the living and the spectral. One particularly striking account comes from a group of canoeists exploring a quiet bend of the Brazos River just before dawn. As a dense fog settled over the water, they noticed a small, glowing light hovering a few feet above the surface. Moments later, a shadowy figure appeared near the bank, motionless but unmistakably human in shape. The canoeists reported hearing the soft sound of a fishing line being cast and the distant echo of a voice calling a name, though no one was visible. As they approached, both the light and the figure vanished, leaving only the gentle murmur of the river and a lingering sense of unease. Local folklore reinforces the haunted reputation of the Brazos River. Stories of settlers swept away in floods, fishermen lost while casting lines, and travelers who vanished near the riverbanks have persisted for generations. Abandoned docks, overgrown crossings, and river bends often serve as the focus for paranormal sightings. The combination of floating lights, ghostly fishermen, moving shadows, and reflections of lost souls creates an enduring mystique, suggesting that the river is more than a physical feature, is a living archive of memory, emotion, and lingering spirits. The Trinity River in Dallas, Texas, winds through the heart of the city, carving a path that has seen centuries of history, development, and tragedy. Once a lifeline for Native American tribes and early settlers, the river has borne witness to countless lives, many of them lost to its unpredictable currents or the dangers of its banks. Over time, these losses have given rise to tales of the supernatural, particularly along the Dallas section, where urban legends persist of shadowy figures emerging from the water near old bridges. Witnesses describe sudden chills, phantom footsteps, and flickering lights moving across the river's surface, creating an atmosphere that blends the natural with the spectral. The Dallas section of the Trinity River has always been a hub of activity. Early crossings, ferries, and bridges facilitated trade and movement, connecting communities and fostering growth. However, the river's strong currents and sudden flash floods claimed many lives, and bodies were often lost to the murky depths. As the city expanded, industrial development and infrastructure projects altered the river's flow, leaving behind abandoned piers, deteriorating bridges, and hidden channels that serve as focal points for paranormal reports. These locations, steeped in both history and loss, have become central to tales of haunting and unexplained activity along the Trinity. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the appearance of shadowy figures rising from the water near old bridges. Witnesses describe forms that seem human but are dark and indistinct, emerging silently from the river and gliding along the banks or across walkways. Some appear to mimic the movements of people from another era, dressed in period clothing, pausing to look toward observers before vanishing. The figures often appear at dusk or in the dead of night when city lights reflect off the water and mist begins to form, adding to the eerie visual effect. Many who have witnessed these apparitions report an overwhelming feeling of being watched, a sensation that lingers long after the figures disappear. Flickering lights along the river's surface are another frequent report. Observers often see small, bright glimmers moving in irregular patterns, sometimes hovering in place before darting along the water or beneath bridges. Some interpret these lights as the spirits of those lost to the river, guiding or warning the living, while others suggest they are manifestations of the river itself, recalling moments of tragedy and human presence. The lights are particularly common near old industrial areas or sections of the river where construction has left pilings and debris, providing the perfect setting for eerie reflections and strange optical phenomena. Auditory experiences along the Trinity River in Dallas are just as unsettling. Witnesses often report phantom footsteps along the riverbanks or on old wooden walkways where no one is present. Some hear voices carried across the water, sometimes shouting, sometimes whispering, and occasionally calling names, adding to the sense that the river preserves echoes of those who once traversed its banks. The sounds of splashing water, the creaking of rusted bridge supports, and the distant clatter of unseen objects all contribute to a chilling environment where the boundary between past and present seems to dissolve. Cold drafts are another common element reported by those exploring the Trinity at night. Sudden drops in temperature, unexplained breezes, and goosebumps often accompany sightings of shadowy figures or flickering lights. These sensations tend to occur near old bridge supports, abandoned piers, or bends in the river where the water moves swiftly, creating a physical reminder of the river's power and unpredictability. Visitors often describe a mixture of awe and fear, sensing that the river itself is alive with memory, watching, and warning them of unseen presences. One striking account comes from a late-night photographer who frequented the Trinity River for urban landscape shots. While capturing images near a deserted bridge, he noticed a faint light hovering above the water, moving slowly against the current. Moments later, a dark figure emerged from the river, standing motionless near the bridge's edge. The photographer felt an immediate chill and heard the sound of soft footsteps on the walkway behind him, though no one was there. As he approached, the figure dissipated into the mist, and the light flickered out, leaving only the sound of the river flowing and the distant hum of the city. The encounter left him shaken, but he later described it as unforgettable. A moment when history, tragedy, and the supernatural seemed to converge. Local legends and folklore reinforced the haunted reputation of the Trinity River. Stories of early settlers drowned while crossing, workers lost during floods, and pedestrians vanishing near bridges have circulated for generations. These tales, combined with first-hand accounts of lights, shadows, and phantom sounds, create an enduring mystique that blurs the line between natural phenomena and the paranormal. The abandoned structures along the river piers, bridge, remnants, and old industrial installations serve as magnets for such reports, suggesting that the river's history and physical presence are inseparable from the haunting experiences described by visitors. The Sabine River, winding through the forests and farmland of East Texas, carries a long and often tragic history. In Panola County, the river has been a silent witness to centuries of life, labor, and loss. Native peoples, early settlers, and travelers relied on its waters for sustenance, transportation, and survival. Yet the river could be unforgiving. Sudden floods, treacherous currents, and unseen obstacles claimed many lives, leaving families to grieve along its banks. Over time, these tragedies have given rise to stories of haunting that continue to capture the imagination of locals and visitors. Spectral figures of settlers searching for lost loved ones, ghostly lanterns hovering over the water, and the mournful sounds of crying children are often reported, suggesting that the river remembers those who perished and refuses to let them go. Panola County's stretch of the Sabine River was historically vital to settlers moving through East Texas. Families established homesteads along its fertile banks, and ferries or simple crossings enabled travel and trade. However, the river could turn deadly without warning. Sudden rains and flash floods swept away livestock and people alike, and many who drowned were never recovered. Over time, these tragedies became woven into the cultural memory of the region. Locals passed down stories of settlers desperately searching for family members lost to the river, of children swept away while playing along the banks, and of travelers vanishing during their crossings. It is in these moments of grief and loss that the river seems to have developed a spectral presence, a haunting that continues to be reported to this day. One of the most frequently described phenomena along this section of the Sabine River is the appearance of spectral figures. Witnesses often report seeing translucent shapes moving along the banks or waiting near the water's edge. Many of these figures appear to be early settlers, dressed in period clothing, searching desperately as if for loved ones lost to the river. Some pause mid-step, looking toward observers with an expression that conveys longing, sorrow, or confusion, before slowly fading back into the mist or trees. The sight of these figures is often accompanied by a heavy, almost tangible atmosphere of sadness, a feeling that the river itself mourns for lives claimed by its currents. Ghostly lanterns are another common element of the Sabine River's haunting. At night, or in the dim light of dawn or dusk, small, flickering lights appear above the water or along the banks. Witnesses describe them as floating or hovering, moving with a slow, deliberate rhythm, almost as if tracing the path of those who once walked the river's edge. These lights are sometimes seen near old crossings, abandoned cabins, or tree-lined bends, and they often disappear when approached, leaving only the quiet ripple of the river. Some believe the lanterns represent the spirits of settlers or travelers, guiding the living or retracing the journeys of the past. Others interpret them as markers of tragedy, illuminating the spots where lives were lost and memories linger. The cries of children are perhaps the most chilling reports along the Panola County stretch. Visitors recount hearing the soft, unmistakable sounds of weeping or playful laughter drifting across the water at night. Despite the absence of any living children nearby, some describe the sounds as echoing from across bends in the river, sometimes accompanied by the sight of fleeting shadows darting along the shore. These reports are often tied to historical accounts of children lost in floods or swept away during play, suggesting that their spirits continue to haunt the river, unable to leave the place where their lives ended so abruptly. Many who hear these cries report feeling a deep sadness, a poignant reminder of the river's dark past. Shadowy figures moving independently of natural elements are another hallmark of the Sabine River's spectral reputation. Locals have described forms that glide along the water, slip between trees, or appear near abandoned structures along the banks. These figures often vanish when approached, leaving only the impression that something unseen is observing, guiding, or mourning along the river. Witnesses frequently report sudden chills, goosebumps, or a feeling of being watched whenever these shadows appear, reinforcing the sense that the river is alive with memory and lingering presence. One particularly vivid account comes from a group of hikers exploring the river at dusk. As fog began to settle over the water, they noticed a small, flickering light moving slowly along the bank. Moments later, a translucent figure emerged, appearing to search along the edge as if calling for someone unseen. At the same time, The hikers heard soft cries of children carried over the water, though no one else was present. As they cautiously approached, the figure and the light vanished into the fog, leaving only the quiet murmur of the river and the lingering feeling of sorrow. The hikers later described the experience as both terrifying and mesmerizing, a moment when the past and present seemed to intersect along the riverbanks. Local folklore supports these haunting reports. Stories of settlers lost in floods, children swept away by the current, and travelers disappearing during crossings have been passed down through generations. Abandoned river crossings, tree-lined banks, and the remnants of early homesteads serve as focal points for reported paranormal activity. Ghostly figures, lanterns, and the cries of children combine to create an enduring mystique, suggesting that the Sabine River is more than a waterway, is a living repository of memory, grief, and lingering spirits. The Colorado River, flowing through the heart of Austin, Texas, has been both a source of life and a place of tragedy for centuries. Its wide, slow-moving waters have nurtured communities, provided recreation, and inspired countless stories. Yet beneath its surface and along its banks, the river has claimed the lives of swimmers, boaters, and travelers. Over the years, these tragedies have given rise to tales of haunting, particularly along the Austin section, where locals and visitors alike report ghostly phenomena. Apparitions of drowned swimmers and accident victims appear near the riverbanks. Floating lights shimmer above the water at night, and chilling experiences suggest that the river remembers those who were lost to its currents. The Colorado River has long been a hub of activity in Austin. Early settlers relied on it for water, transportation, and irrigation, while in more modern times, recreational activities such as swimming, kayaking, and boating became common. But the river's serene appearance can be deceiving. Swift currents, unexpected drop-offs, and underwater hazards have caused countless accidents over the decades. Many victims were never recovered, leaving their families and communities to mourn without closure. These tragic losses have become woven into the lore of the river, giving rise to stories of restless spirits and unexplained occurrences that persist to this day. One of the most commonly reported phenomena along this stretch is the appearance of ghostly figures near the riverbanks. Witnesses describe translucent forms of men, women, and sometimes children, standing silently at the water's edge or slowly moving along paths once frequented by swimmers. Some appeared to mimic the motions of the living waiting, calling out, or reaching toward the water as if reliving the final moments of their lives. These apparitions often manifest during the quiet hours of dawn or late at night, when the city's bustle has faded and mist rises from the river's surface, creating an ethereal atmosphere. Those who encounter these figures frequently report sudden chills, a feeling of heaviness, or an inexplicable sadness that lingers long after the figures vanish. Floating lights are another hallmark of haunting along the Austin section of the Colorado River. Observers have reported small, glowing orbs appearing above the water, moving slowly across the current, and often disappearing when approached. Some suggest these lights represent the spirits of those who drowned, their energy lingering in the form of luminous apparitions. Others believe they may be residual energy tied to the river's history of accidents and loss. The lights are most commonly seen near popular swimming areas, old docks, and bridges, where the weight of past tragedies seems particularly palpable. The unpredictable behavior of these lights, sometimes flickering, sometimes drifting serenely, adds to their mystique and reinforces the sense that the river is alive with memory. Auditory phenomena are also frequently reported along the Colorado River in Austin. Witnesses recount the sound of splashing water, soft cries, or distant shouts near areas where no living person is present. Phantom footsteps along the banks or creaking of unseen boats contribute to the unnerving atmosphere. Some visitors report hearing whispered warnings or urgent calls, as if the spirits are trying to communicate or guide the living away from danger. These sounds often accompany visual sightings of apparitions or floating lights, creating a multisensory experience that blurs the line between reality and the supernatural. Cold drafts and sudden chills are another recurring element of these hauntings. Many who explore the riverbanks at night report feeling icy gusts of wind or a sharp drop in temperature. Even on warm summer evenings, these sensations often coincide with sightings of figures or lights, reinforcing the sense of presence and adding a physical component to the spectral experience. Some interpret this as the residual energy of lives lost in the river, a reminder that the Colorado River is both a place of recreation and a resting place for souls unable to move on. One particularly striking account comes from a late-night kayaker exploring a quiet bend of the river. As mist rolled over the surface, a faint light appeared, hovering just above the water. Moments later, a translucent figure emerged near the shore, its movements slow and deliberate, as if searching for something lost. The kayaker felt a sudden chill and heard the unmistakable sound of splashing footsteps behind them, though no one was visible. When they tried to approach, both the light and the figure vanished, leaving only the gentle sound of the river flowing and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. The encounter left the kayaker shaken but intrigued, a stark reminder of the river's haunted history. Local lore and historical accounts further reinforced the haunted reputation of the Colorado River. Stories of swimmers swept away, boaters capsizing, and accidental drownings have persisted through generations. Abandoned docks, submerged hazards, and quiet bends in the river serve as focal points for sightings, while modern visitors continue to report lights, figures, and sounds that cannot be easily explained. These experiences suggest that the river is not merely a body of water, but a living archive of memory and loss, preserving the presence of those who vanished in its depths. The Rio Grande, stretching along the southern border of Texas, carries centuries of history and tragedy, particularly in the Laredo section. This wide, slow-moving river has long been a vital lifeline for settlers, traders, and travelers. Yet it has also been the site of countless accidents, disappearances, and conflicts. The combination of its natural beauty, unpredictable currents, and historical significance has given rise to tales of hauntings that persist to this day. Visitors often report shadowy figures moving through the thick fog that rises off the river, mysterious lights hovering above the surface, and whispers that seem to drift across the water, warning travelers to keep their distance. These stories suggest that the river preserves memories of those who perished along its banks, lingering in the misty Laredo nights. The Rio Grande has been a central figure in the history of Laredo for centuries. Native American tribes, Spanish explorers, and early settlers all relied on its waters for survival and transportation. However, the river could be dangerous, with swift currents, deep channels, and unexpected drop-offs, claiming the lives of those who underestimated it. Traders and travelers sometimes vanished while attempting crossings, while floods and sudden storms destroyed crops, homes, and livelihoods. Over time, the losses became part of the region's folklore, blending with stories of bandits, border conflicts, and the lives of those who settled along its banks. Today, these historical tragedies are said to have left an imprint on the river, giving rise to spectral sightings and paranormal phenomena. One of the most frequently reported hauntings in the Laredo section involves shadowy figures seen moving through the fog that often blankets the river at night or in the early morning. Witnesses describe forms that are vaguely human, sometimes appearing as men or women in period clothing, silently gliding along the banks or wading in shallow waters. Some of these figures appear to search for lost companions or loved ones, while others seem to simply linger, observing anyone who ventures too close. These apparitions often appear near abandoned docks, old river crossings, and tree-lined banks where the mist is thickest. Many who encounter them report a feeling of being watched, an almost palpable presence that leaves a sense of unease even after the figures vanish into the fog. Mysterious lights hovering above the river are another hallmark of Rio Grande haunt. Small orbs of light, sometimes bright and steady, sometimes flickering and shifting, have been seen gliding across the water or hovering near old piers and riverbanks. Witnesses often report that these lights vanish when approached, leaving no trace behind. Some interpret the lights as the spirits of travelers or settlers who perished in the river, their energy lingering in luminous form. Others believe the lights are warnings, guiding the living away from dangerous sections of the river where many have disappeared. The combination of fog, reflections from the water, and the quiet night often makes these lights appear otherworldly, contributing to the river's mysterious reputation. Auditory phenomena are also commonly reported along this stretch of the Rio Grande. Travelers and locals alike describe whispers drifting across the water, sometimes audible only for a few moments, often warning passers-by to stay away. Some report hearing cries for help, the sound of footsteps along deserted riverbanks, or distant voices calling names. These phantom sounds are frequently accompanied by a drop in temperature or an unexplained breeze, adding a physical element to the haunting. Many who experience these occurrences describe a sense of urgency or danger, as though the river itself is attempting to communicate with the living. Cold spots and sudden chills are another feature of the haunting in the Laredo section. Visitors often feel icy gusts, sudden drops in temperature, or goosebumps while walking along the banks at night. These sensations often coincide with sightings of figures or lights and seem to reinforce the presence of something unseen. Some interpret this as the residual energy of those who lost their lives in the river, a lingering reminder that the Rio Grande is both a source of life and a repository of tragedy. One particularly striking account comes from a fisherman who visited the Rio Grande just after sunset. As he cast his line near an old wooden dock, a thick fog rolled across the water. He noticed a faint light hovering just above the river, moving slowly against the current. Moments later, a shadowy figure emerged from the mist, standing silently at the water's edge. The fisherman felt a chill run down his spine and heard soft whispers carried across the river, seemingly warning him to leave. When he cautiously approached, both the light and the figure vanished, leaving only the sound of the river and the rustling of leaves in the wind. The experience left him shaken, a stark reminder of the river's haunted history. Local folklore supports these spectral accounts. Stories of settlers, traders, and travelers lost in the Rio Grande have circulated for generations, often tied to specific landmarks such as old crossings, abandoned docks, or tree-lined bends in the river. Shadowy figures, floating lights, and whispered warnings are all part of this enduring mystique, suggesting that the river preserves the memory of those who perished along its banks. These reports, both historical and contemporary, paint a picture of a river that is more than a natural waterway. Is a living record of human tragedy and supernatural presence. The Neches River, flowing through the lush landscapes of East Texas, has long been a lifeline for settlers, traders, and workers. Its waters provided transportation, food, and fertile soil for agriculture, shaping the lives of communities along its banks. Yet the river has also been a site of accidents, drownings, and sudden floods that claimed lives without warning. In the Tyler section of the Neches River, these tragedies have given rise to tales of haunting that persist to this day. Visitors report seeing ghostly apparitions on fog-laden mornings, glowing lights hovering over the water, and shadowy forms moving silently along old docks and abandoned crossings. These sightings suggest that the river carries the memories of those who perished and that the spirits of long-forgotten settlers and workers continue to linger along its banks. The Neches River played a vital role in the history of East Texas. Early settlers depended on it for sustenance, while loggers, farmers, and boatmen used its waters for transport and commerce. But the river could be unforgiving. Sudden storms and rising currents swept people and livestock away, while wooden docks and rudimentary crossings sometimes failed under weight and age. Many who drowned were never recovered, leaving only the sorrowful recollections of family and neighbors. Over time, these losses became interwoven with the river's identity, spawning stories of spectral sightings and supernatural activity that have been passed down for generations. One of the most commonly reported phenomena along this stretch is the appearance of ghostly figures. Witnesses often describe human-like shapes appearing in the early morning fog, moving along the banks or near shallow areas of the river. Some appear dressed in clothing reminiscent of early settlers or laborers, silently trudging along the paths that once carried the living to work or home. Others seem to linger near old docks or abandoned crossings, standing still as though searching for someone lost long ago. These apparitions often vanish when approached, leaving only the eerie sensation that they are still watching. Those who encounter these figures frequently report a sudden chill or a feeling of unease, as though the river itself is aware of its haunted past. Glowing lights hovering above the water are another signature of the Neches River hauntings. Observers often report small, soft lights floating near old docks or drifting along the current. The lights sometimes appear as orbs, moving slowly and deliberately, while at other times they flicker unpredictably, vanishing when anyone gets close. Some believe these lights are the spirits of lost settlers or workers, their energy lingering in the form of luminous forms above the river. Others think the lights are warnings, guiding the living away from treacherous sections of the river where many have met their end. These ethereal glimmers are most frequently seen during foggy mornings or quiet evenings when mist rises off the water, heightening the mysterious ambience. Auditory phenomena are also reported in the Tyler section of the Neches River. Witnesses have described faint whispers drifting across the water, the creaking of old docks, and even the sound of footsteps echoing along empty riverbanks. Some claim to hear voices calling names or urgent cries for help, though no one is present. These phantom sounds often accompany visual sightings of figures or lights, creating a deeply immersive experience that blurs the line between the natural and the supernatural. Many who have experienced these phenomena report feelings of urgency or caution, as though the river is attempting to communicate with them or warn them of unseen dangers. Cold drafts and sudden chills often coincide with these sightings. Visitors along the riverbanks have reported icy gusts that appear from nowhere, a sudden drop in temperature, or a tingling sensation as if touched by an unseen presence. These experiences often accompany ghostly figures or floating lights, reinforcing the sense of a supernatural presence along the river. Some interpret these physical sensations as the residual energy of those who lost their lives in accidents, a lingering reminder that the Neches River is not only a place of beauty and life, but also one of memory and sorrow. One notable encounter comes from a group of hikers exploring the Neches River near an abandoned crossing. As a thick morning fog settled over the water, a faint glow appeared near the river's edge. Moments later, a shadowy figure emerged from the mist, moving slowly along the bank, pausing as though searching for something or someone. The hikers felt a chill in the air and heard a faint whisper that seemed to call their names. When they cautiously approached, both the light and the figure vanished, leaving only the quiet murmur of the river and the rustling of leaves in the wind. The hikers later described the experience as haunting and mesmerizing, a glimpse into the lingering past of the river and those who once lived along it. Local folklore and historical accounts reinforce these haunting reports. Stories of settlers lost to floods, loggers swept away during work, and travelers disappearing during crossings have persisted for generations. Abandoned docks, remnants of old crossings, and tree-lined river bends serve as hotspots for reported activity. Shadowy figures, ghostly lights, and whispers all contribute to the enduring reputation of the Neches River as a place where the living and the lost intersect. These stories suggest that the river is more than a natural waterway, is a repository of memory, grief, and the lingering presence of those who vanished along its banks. The Red River, carving its way through the northern reaches of Texas, carries centuries of history along its winding course. In the Texarkana section, the river has witnessed battles, settlements, and countless human tragedies. Its calm waters conceal a turbulent past, where skirmishes, accidents, and sudden floods have claimed lives. Over time, these events have given rise to persistent stories of haunting, particularly tied to the Civil War era. Visitors report seeing spectral soldiers marching or crossing the river at night, glowing lights hovering above the water, and faint echoes of battle cries carried through the mist. The Red River in this section is more than a geographical landmark. It is a living memory of history, tragedy, and lingering spirits. Texarkana, situated near the border of Texas and Arkansas, has long been shaped by the Red River. During the Civil War, the river served as a strategic boundary, a transportation route, and a theater for troop movements and skirmishes. Soldiers often navigated its waters under cover of darkness, moving supplies and troops to distant locations. Many did not survive the journey. Drownings, ambushes, and sudden skirmishes left countless bodies lost to the river, their final resting places hidden beneath the current. Over time, stories of these soldiers and the tragedies along the Red River became woven into local lore, giving rise to ghostly accounts that persist to this day. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the appearance of spectral soldiers. Witnesses describe figures dressed in period uniforms, sometimes marching silently along the riverbank or crossing the waters as if unaware of the living observers. These apparitions are most often seen at night, when fog rises from the river and shrouds the landscape in an eerie haze. Some soldiers appear to carry muskets or flags, while others seem to drift weightlessly, their forms partially translucent. Those who encounter these figures often report a deep sense of sadness or unease, as if the spirits are still bound to the river by unfinished duty or the traumas of battle. Glowing lights above the water are another hallmark of the Red River's haunted reputation. Small orbs, sometimes steady and luminous, sometimes flickering and erratic, are frequently reported drifting just above the river's surface. These lights are often seen near old crossings, submerged logs, or abandoned docks. Some speculate they are the spirits of soldiers or travelers who perished in the river, their presence manifesting as luminous energy. Others suggest the lights serve as warnings, guiding the living away from the dangerous currents and hidden hazards of the river. The lights often appear in clusters, moving together across the water, adding to the haunting illusion of ghostly activity along the river. Auditory phenomena further reinforce the spectral presence of the Red River. Visitors report faint battle cries, the clash of swords, or the distant rumble of cannon fire echoing across the water. Some hear the voices of soldiers calling names or giving orders, though no living person is present. The sounds are often accompanied by visual sightings of spectral figures or hovering lights, creating a multisensory experience that blurs the line between history and the supernatural. Many who encounter these phenomena describe a feeling of tension or urgency, as if the river is attempting to relay the emotions of the past to the present. Cold spots and sudden chills are also a common element of the haunting in the Texarkana section. Travelers along the river at night frequently report a sudden drop in temperature or an icy breeze that seems to come from nowhere. These physical sensations often coincide with sightings of soldiers or lights, reinforcing the impression that something unseen is present. Some interpret these experiences as residual energy from those who perished in the river, a reminder that the Red River is a conduit for memory as well as water. One particularly vivid account comes from a late-night fisherman who had anchored near a bend in the river. As fog rolled across the water, he noticed a faint glow hovering above the surface. Moments later, several shadowy figures appeared, crossing the river as if on an invisible bridge. The fisherman felt an intense chill and heard faint cries and commands carried across the mist. When he cautiously moved closer, the figures and lights vanished, leaving only the sound of the water flowing and the whisper of wind through the trees. The experience left him shaken, a stark reminder of the river's haunted history and the presence of spirits that refuse to rest. Local folklore supports these haunting accounts. Tales of soldiers lost during troop movements, travelers drowned while attempting crossings, and skirmishes along the river have circulated for generations. Old crossings, abandoned docks, and tree-lined river bends serve as hotspots for reported activity. Spectral soldiers, floating lights, and distant battle sounds all contribute to the enduring reputation of the Red River as a place where the living and the dead intersect. These stories suggest that the river is more than a body of water. It's a repository of memory, grief, and lingering spirits. The Lavaca River, winding through the heart of South Texas, near Victoria, has long been a lifeline for the communities along its banks. Its waters provided food, transportation, and fertile soil for settlers and farmers. Yet they have also claimed countless lives over the centuries. Sudden currents, hidden sandbars, and unpredictable floods have led to drownings and accidents, leaving a trail of sorrow and mystery. These tragedies have given rise to stories of haunting along the river, particularly in the Victoria section. Visitors have reported ghostly fishermen casting invisible lines, shadowy children playing near the banks, and mysterious lights hovering over the water. Some have seen figures standing silently in the river itself, vanishing without a trace when approached, suggesting that the Lavaca River carries the memories of those lost along its waters. Historically, the Lavaca River was central to the development of the region. Early settlers relied on it for sustenance, transportation, and trade, while farmers used its floodplains for crops. Loggers and fishermen depended on its waters for their livelihood, often braving its unpredictable currents. Despite its importance, the river could be unforgiving. Sudden floods and strong currents swept people and animals away, while hidden sandbars and mudbanks claimed countless lives. Over time, these tragedies became part of local folklore, with stories of spectral figures and strange lights appearing along the riverbank. These tales suggest that the river remembers every life lost and manifests them in ghostly forms for those who wander too close. Ghostly fishermen are among the most commonly reported apparitions along the Lavaca River. Witnesses often describe seeing figures dressed in period clothing, sometimes with old-fashioned hats and jackets, standing along the banks or wading in shallow waters. They appear to cast invisible lines, their movements deliberate, yet silent, as though performing the same tasks they once did in life. Observers frequently report an uneasy sensation when near these figures, a sudden chill or tingling in the air, as if the spirits are aware of intruders on their domain. When approached, these phantom fishermen often vanish, leaving the witness with only the sound of water lapping at the riverbank and the whisper of the wind through the trees. Children are also a frequent part of the river's haunting reputation. Shadowy forms resembling young boys and girls have been reported playing along the banks or at the water's edge, often appearing on foggy mornings or during quiet twilight hours. Some witnesses claim to hear laughter or the splash of tiny feet hitting the water. Yet when they try to approach, the children disappear without a trace. Many believe these apparitions are the spirits of those lost to drowning or accidents long ago, their presence a lingering echo of youthful energy trapped along the river. Others suggest the figures are warnings, a reminder of the river's hidden dangers and the fragility of life along its banks. Glowing lights hovering over the water are another hallmark of Lavaca River haunting. These lights often appear as small orbs, moving slowly and deliberately along the river's course. Some float just above the surface, while others drift near old docks or abandoned crossings. The lights have been described as blue, white, or golden, flickering unpredictably or remaining steady for several moments before disappearing. Witnesses often interpret these luminous phenomena as manifestations of spirits trying to communicate or guide the living away from danger. On foggy mornings, the lights can appear particularly eerie, reflecting off the mist and giving the impression of ghostly lanterns floating along the water. Auditory phenomena accompany many of these visual sightings. Visitors have reported hearing the sound of unseen fishing lines being cast, faint splashes, laughter of children, or whispers carried across the water. Some claim to hear urgent calls, soft warnings, or even conversations in languages no longer commonly spoken in the area. These sounds often coincide with the appearance of figures or lights, creating a multisensory experience that blurs the boundary between the natural and the supernatural. Those who encounter these sounds frequently describe a feeling of unease or a sense that the river itself is aware of their presence. Cold spots and sudden chills are commonly reported along the Victoria section of the Lavaca River. Hikers, fishermen, and evening walkers often feel abrupt drops in temperature or icy gusts that seem to emerge from nowhere. These physical sensations frequently coincide with sightings of ghostly figures or floating lights, reinforcing the impression of a supernatural presence. Some interpret these experiences as residual energy from those lost to the river, a reminder that the waters are not only a source of life, but also a repository of memory and sorrow. One particularly striking encounter comes from a kayaker exploring the river at dawn. As fog rolled across the water, he noticed a faint golden light hovering above the current. Moments later, the shape of a child appeared near the bank, crouched as though playing by the water's edge. The kayaker felt an icy chill sweep over him and heard faint laughter and whispers carried on the wind. When he tried to approach, both the light and the figure vanished, leaving only the flowing river and the soft rustling of reeds. The experience left him shaken, a stark reminder of the Lavaca River's haunted reputation and the lingering presence of spirits along its banks. And settlers who vanished while crossing the river are recounted in hushed tones by longtime residents. Abandoned docks, old crossings, and tree-lined bins serve as hotspots for reported activity. The San Antonio River flows quietly through the heart of downtown, its waters reflecting the glow of streetlights, the colorful facades of restaurants, and the lively bustle of tourists by day. Yet, when night falls and the city quiets, the river seems to take on a different life. Locals and visitors alike have long reported strange occurrences along the downtown Riverwalk. Ghostly figures are said to wander the pathways. Lights appear mysteriously in the evening mist. Shadows flit along deserted walkways, and whispers echo from beneath the old stone bridges. These sightings suggest that the San Antonio River is more than a scenic centerpiece. It is a living archive of history, memory, and lingering spirits, silently reminding the living that the past never truly disappears. The river has played a central role in the life of San Antonio for centuries. It was first a vital resource for indigenous peoples, then a lifeline for Spanish settlers, and later the focus of the city's commercial and cultural development. Over the years, the downtown Riverwalk became lined with shops, restaurants, and walkways, transforming the waterway into a hub of social activity. Yet, beneath the modern vibrancy, countless stories of tragedy and loss have accumulated. Floods, drownings, and even violent altercations along the riverbanks have left a spectral residue that some say lingers to this day. Those walking the river at night sometimes catch glimpses of figures dressed in period clothing, wandering the paths or pausing near the water as if searching for something or someone lost long ago. Ghostly figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena in this downtown section. Witnesses describe seeing people dressed in 18th and 19th century attire, sometimes strolling along the Riverwalk, sometimes standing silently in the shadows. These figures often appear partially translucent, their edges blurred in the mist rising from the water. Some seem unaware of the living, continuing their ethereal activities as though trapped in a moment from the past. Others appear to be searching, moving slowly along the walkway or pausing near a bridge, as if calling out for companions who never returned. Those who encounter these apparitions often report a chill in the air, a sudden sense of unease, and the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Strange lights in the mist add to the river's eerie reputation. Visitors often describe small, flickering lights floating just above the water or drifting along the walkway. These lights sometimes resemble lanterns, hovering in mid-air as though carried by invisible hands. At other times, they appear as small orbs, moving erratically or fading into the fog. Some interpret these luminous phenomena as spirits trying to guide the living, while others see them as warnings to stay away from dangerous areas where past tragedies occurred. On misty nights, the combination of fog, reflections on the water, and the soft glow of these lights can create an almost dreamlike, otherworldly atmosphere along the downtown Riverwalk. Auditory experiences are another common aspect of the San Antonio River hauntings. Visitors have reported hearing faint whispers, distant laughter, and soft footsteps echoing along empty walkways. Some claim to hear voices coming from beneath bridges or the low arches of older stone structures, carrying messages or calls from the past. These sounds often accompany sightings of figures or lights, creating a multi-sensory impression that blurs the line between reality and the supernatural. Those who hear these echoes often feel a mix of curiosity and apprehension, as though the river is actively reaching out to communicate its history and its lingering stories. Physical sensations also frequently accompany these experiences. Sudden cold drafts, goosebumps, and unexplained chills are common reports from those walking the Riverwalk after dark. People often describe these sensations as brushing across the skin, appearing without any source of wind or weather changes. Some feel the gentle touch of invisible hands or the weight of unseen presences nearby. These sensations, combined with ghostly sights and sounds, contribute to the downtown river's reputation as a place where the living can feel the presence of the past in very real ways. One memorable encounter comes from a late-night jogger near the intersection of Commerce Street and the Riverwalk. As fog rolled in over the water, the runner noticed a faint light hovering near the edge of the river, moving slowly upstream. Moments later, a shadowy figure appeared on the walkway, pausing as if waiting for someone. The jogger felt an icy breeze and heard a soft whisper that seemed to carry across the water. When he slowed to observe, both the figure and the light vanished, leaving only the reflection of the city lights on the river and the faint sound of water lapping against the banks. He later described the experience as unsettling yet captivating, a vivid reminder of the lingering presence of history along the river. Local lore and historical accounts reinforced these experiences. Tales of settlers, travelers, and workers who met untimely deaths along the river are passed down through generations. The downtown Riverwalk, with its mixture of old stone bridges, abandoned walkways, and quiet corners, provides the perfect backdrop for ghostly sightings. Figures dressed in historical attire, mysterious floating lights, and whispered echoes all contribute to the river's enduring reputation as a haunted urban landmark. These stories suggest that the San Antonio River is more than a scenic feature of the city. It is a repository of collective memory, a place where the living can encounter remnants of the past and feel the weight of history firsthand. There you have it, 25 haunted rivers in Texas where ghosts still float. From the bustling streets of San Antonio to remote East Texas bayous, these rivers are more than just waterways. They are vessels of memory, tragedy, and restless spirits. Glowing lights, shadowy figures, and whispers from the past remind us that some waters never forget, and some souls never find rest. If tonight's journey through haunted rivers sent chills down your spine, make sure to subscribe, ring the bell, and join us for more explorations of haunted landscapes, forgotten legends, and the unseen forces that linger just beyond the light. Keep your lanterns bright, your senses sharp, and your courage steady, because in Texas haunted rivers, the currents carry more than water, and the spirits are always floating. Stay brave, stay curious, and good night.